And we're live. SNL, Saturday, etc., etc. Adam Gingrich, Glenn Herman. What's happening, everyone?
All right, we're set up here. If people out there are experiencing slight lags tonight, I'm not going to be surprised, judging by my uh, broadband performance tonight, earlier today as well. They are clearly either overwhelmed or cutting back voluntarily on the speed and resolution of all kinds of different devices and apps and whatnot. So hopefully there won't be a problem here. But don't be surprised if it's a glitch or two, because the entire world has isolated themselves at home and they are streaming out their assholes. And it's likely to strain the current infrastructure.
Is it? Let's
Depending
see.
on where you live.
Yeah, out here it hasn't changed anything, but I'm
Well,
sure.
I just did a total reboot 15 minutes ago when our system went down, when our box connection went down through the internet. So everything booted back up, and then I'm looking 5x5 right now, and everybody seems good on both sides here. Periscope, YouTube. I do not have Twitch up. So
Aftermath.
why is the
And
clock at 114 days? That is because the election, as Glenn astutely has discovered, has been delayed due to the China virus. So it'll be 114 days left before we get to humiliate Beauregard Sessions. Yes, damn the Chinese. Damn them for making us wait all that much longer to humiliate the man who attempted to take down the president. Unless he
Chris.
gets the virus. Of course. Of course. Okay. So everybody's looking good. That's good. All right. Because God forbid, if the internet infrastructure gets a little wobbly, this world is going to go right off the axis. So welcome all. I'm going to go ahead and block somebody on Periscope from my side. Um, Maybe you can do the same. You probably just did. Shiva's third eye. You know what Shiva's third eye actually is? The brown eye. See ya. Go be by yourself. Periscope, self-isolation. Shelter in place, Shiva. Shelter in place.
Cox Internet is down in Louisiana. Yeah, I could tell you that. I worked for Cox briefly. They are worthless. Family owned business, and the family is all garbage.
Yeah, and to Slider's point here, that 50% of bandwidth is porn. That's not when the whole family's together in the house. So you see, my stream just went off offline on YouTube. That could be a momentary interruption. on my end.
YouTube and Netflix lowering quality. Wow, then they'll finally discover our channel.
Yeah.
The lower they go, we'll be waiting for them. Bottom of the barrel. Hey guys, nice to see you.
So yeah, it's probably my internet. I've got bumped off Periscope here, and I'm back up. Looks like we're doing all right. Yeah, we went offline momentarily on YouTube and Periscope, but we are back up without incident.
Well, that's
So no need
because
to
Restream
reboot.
didn't trigger YouTube. So I have to go into Restream, delete the YouTube channel, reset the YouTube channel, recreate it manually, and then start
No, this
everything
just
up again.
happened. This just happened like 2 seconds ago.
Oh, it's got to be
Yeah.
something on your end because I'm.
No. Everybody's saying it right now on there.
Hmm.
So it
Well,
was a very brief glitch. I thought we were gonna have to reboot it. I went back out in, X'd out, and came back in on Periscope. We went back, caught live, and same thing with YouTube. Some people had Big Fish had a Francis 55 had a brief moment. Perturbed Sun, Debbie Tyler, all the same message. Live stream offline. Came right back online, and we didn't have to redo the whole link, which is helpful. And like I said, that's the kind of thing I've been experiencing on and off all day with my connection. So don't be surprised if it just sporadically happens, and it might not be related to anybody's individual connection, but there may be limitations being put on by certain providers at this point. You'd think at this point of the night, though, it would start to lower the threshold of any of that throttling, but who the hell knows? But when you take 1 billion people in this world, and a bulk of our own country, and you bring them home, and they're all trying to work online, and if they're not, they're just streaming shit online all day because they're home, or their kids are streaming. I think we're stressing that infrastructure, and it's interesting because we'll be learning a lot about our grid and what we can do and not do, and let's just be thankful that we're not stressing it across the board due to any climatic situations around the country, that this is happening at a fairly peaceful time, temperature wise, for most of the country, because you can imagine the strain of something like this happening had it really had gone at the time that the Chinese were experiencing this. Can you imagine New York City basically shutting itself down in wintertime, and you've got the grid on both ends getting stressed? So thankfully we don't have that problem. But anyway, moving on, it looks like we're good for now.
the EU requested people stream in standard.
Standardized.
It's funny when I lived in England, the telephones were terrible. Post-war, the British never invested in copper,
Hmm.
and I'd say mid 90s they started installing cell towers, and for the first time ever, Europeans had decent phone, but it
Hmm.
was all cell phones. The landlines were still awful. No one uses them
Yeah.
practically. And for about 10 years there, the Europeans would mock the United States because we were so far behind when it came to the cell phone infrastructure. But, this was around 2000, 9/11 happened. And we sort of caught up about, I don't know, when do you think we caught up? 10 years ago? 2010? We
Well,
really started kicking ass. And
we
5G is rolling out now in most of the
yeah, the
major
5G
cities.
thing is the 5G thing is the answer to the future's questions of what we're going to eventually need. But that's the disagreement we're having with Great Britain right now, because the Chinese have invested so much of their existence on rolling out uh, Huawei faster than what we could do 5G and cheaper, but knowing that they could always tap in on the back end and spy on anybody that they want across the entire globe. I mean, this is why this is such a strange moment in time for all of this to come to an apex here with this virus situation. It really gives us one more chance as a nation here, and of course with our sister countries over there in Europe. I refer to them as sister countries not only because they're allies, but because that's how I think they would be gendered if they were in fact of human species. And I just think that we got to get our shit together again, and we got to like come up with sophisticated trade deals, working with each other on technology advances, and not China. I don't want to cut off the entire southeastern, you know, or the Asian theater from participating in all these things, but clearly, we've got to do something to protect ourselves from China. And I think right now China is just kind of like the curtains were thrown back, and you see the little President Xi Oz, and everything he was hoping to accomplish. And
Well, I mean, come on, man. I mean, when this change with the Chinese occurred, and when was that? Let me think about it. I think it was around 1990. Yeah, second year in the Bush presidency. Um, it's been a while now, but that's where I think it started. And
well, that was when they took the trinket market from Japan. Once Japan matured past that period where they were just kind of like doing all the knick-knack paddywhack shit, and they went into serious electronics, and all of a sudden they had their expansion. I think you're right. I think right around that time China was like, okay, we can't continue to just send 12-year-olds to pump out little toy creatures and make a living in this global economy. And everything they did with their currency just made them look a little bit more attractive to the WTO, and everybody fell for it, including George Herbert Walker Bush.
that's a nice sanitized history, but it's not what I remember. What I remember was betrayal at the highest levels of our government, and there were people screaming, "Don't do it." But we were literally mocked from the public square and reduced to the fringes, called radicals, racists. People would say, "I don't understand economics." It was an awful period, the late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah, but that's not our call. I mean, we didn't ramrod this thing through the WTO. I mean, this was like everybody got in bed together and decided that China was going to be a hotbed of productivity and investment, and so everybody jumped in, and that's how you got the whole European and American perspective that, hey, China's not so bad, you know, because it's cheap labor, man.
Well, I
That's
mean,
like the
how many
biggest
years
thing.
ago was that now? 30 years ago?
No, at least 30 years ago, more than
1990,
30.
2000,
Yeah.
30 years. 30 years we've been sold out, but every time you go to Walmart or Kmart, you're strengthening the Chinese, and more the politicians are turning the other cheek. I mean, remember, am I the only one who remembers Bill Clinton's one of his bundler? Wasn't his name Lou or something? Ted Lou or something was
But
caught,
Ted Lieu's the communist
and not him, but there was
congressman
there
from
was some
California. Yeah.
Chinese money bundler for the Clintons that was caught with a briefcase
Oh, yeah.
filled with
Yeah,
top
that was a huge
secret
case.
military
Oh,
schematics,
and
wasn't it?
bags of cash,
Yeah,
and
bags of
they
cash.
were sending the cash over here, and then Chinese Americans were writing checks to the Clinton campaign. It was all busted open, and Janet Reno decided that it was not worthy of an independent prosecutor.
Right.
My, how times have changed.
Have they? I mean,
Well,
I mean, what has changed? I
I
mean,
mean,
the
in respect that
Democrats never get investigated. That hasn't changed, right? Republicans still are going to jail for process
yeah, I don't
crimes.
think
That
it'll
hasn't
get us
changed.
thrown off YouTube if I say something like Janet Reno was 10 times the man Jeff Sessions will ever be.
Well, I think you're right. I
But we'll
mean,
just throw it out there.
yeah. I mean, that's a great way to put it. Uh anyway, look, did he go to jail? That guy, the money bundler guy.
I think in the whole grand scheme of thing, like one or two guys got sentenced, and I don't even know that they stayed in the country to actually go to jail. To be honest with you.
Well, anyway, that's the way I remember this is it was originally sold when Reagan left office. Bush couldn't wait to normalize China. And by the second year of his presidency, of his one term bullshit presidency, he'd opened the floodgates. They had brought China into the World Trade Organization with no preconditions, even though we know that they were vivisecting and murdering. And basically,
Mhm.
it's a. I don't need to, at this point, I don't think I need to detail what the Chinese rulers are. What they, if you don't know, you're probably too stupid to watch this broadcast. Go watch Cernovich and, jerk your 1 inch rice stick. Um, can we say 1 inch rice stick? Will that get us? I think I'm getting worse and worse, but there it is. Yeah, but all Nixon did was go there. He was like the first president to go and have a photo op with the Chinese. Richard Nixon, for all of his sins, did not sell out the
Oh
United
no, no, not at
States.
all.
Right? Nixon may have been
You
crazy, but he was not. He was still
well,
patriotic. He wasn't.
yeah, you're right because Nixon was the first one to identify the fact that the Russians and well at that time the Soviets and the Chinese were starting to form this uneasy, you know, uh, relationship that all of a sudden started to get a little bit easier. So he's like, "Screw this! We're not going to get left behind. All I have to do is negotiate my way into a meeting." Nixon was very much like Trump
Hmm.
when it came to that stuff. Like, I'll sit down with Mao and we'll have a chat. He respects me. He doesn't respect anybody else. That type of thing. I'm not sending Henry over again or bullshit like that. So yeah, there's definitely symmetry there where Nixon thought that he could make inroads with the ruling Chinese, tyrannical government, the authoritarian government, through its leader and the personality cult the cult of personality that existed between the two of them. And Trump very much has that. But if you notice what Trump's doing during these periods of dispute with the Chinese, low level, not low level, but mid level Chinese Communist Party officers are the one trashing us, causing all these problems. It's Trump just wants to keep the floor clean between him and Xi personally. Anybody below Xi takes a shot, boom, it's going
Yeah.
to be hit a direct hit, probably from Pompeo, and so Trump can keep everything clean. But there's one thing that he's not backing off of, and she's just going to have to live with it. It's the Chinese virus. I think if you notice, Trump didn't really get into the specifics of where the virus came from until they started up with that bullshit Communist Party propaganda crap, and then all of a sudden it went from the Wuhan area coronavirus to, the Wuhan virus to Chinese virus. I mean, and that's where it's at right now, and that's about where it's going to stay in my mind. Certainly, Pompeo was. You remember when we first started this administration, and people were still arguing about whether we could say anything about radical Islam. Remember that? I mean, we had guys like General Kelly
Yeah.
and Mattis said, don't use terms like radical Islamic terrorism and shit like
Those were
that.
the good old
We are
days,
so
man, when we were just afraid of the Arab terrorists. It seems like so long ago.
it does. It's so over. It's so over now that the Secretary of State is gladly getting up there and just saying this Chinese virus.
Right.
this Chinese virus that is attacking our country. I mean, they're not only just using Chinese virus, they're using words like invading and attacking. And as we know, in military propaganda terms, those are messages to the public that we are under siege. And when you attach a prefatory country to that, you've got a message. And we've done it for sure. Or as they say, the kids, faux show.
Oh, show.
Faux
Actually,
show. We are in a
I hate to
propaganda
break
war.
this to you. The kids that would say faux show are about 35 years old now.
And probably get punched. I get punched in the face for saying faux show, faux
Yeah.
shizzle,
I was
faux
like the
shizzle, whatever.
oldest guy saying faux show like 25 years ago. I can only imagine. It doesn't really matter. So this new talking point, I mean, we thought we were going to roll into the reelection with 4 or 5 bullet points that you had brought to everyone's attention a year and a half ago. The economy and jobs in America and a whole host of these things, none of which are relevant anymore. And now you're saying
I
that
know.
one of the main points now is the fucking Chinese would be bullet point one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that's what the Chinese owned media, and by that I mean the American media, is deciding to propagate, promulgate, whatever you want to call it, the same type of propaganda on the American people, and saying that this is racist, this is xenophobic, this is taking away from the fact that this is a disease affecting all countries equally. But that's not true, and we know it's not true because we know that the portions of Italy that are giving up the highest mortality or the highest percentages of northern province Chinese people
Uh-huh.
who live in Italy in the garment industry in and around Milan.
I'm glad you
And
finally.
they,
I've been on a moratorium from mentioning anything, but I'm waiting for you to mention things. So for a week now, I've been biting my tongue to point out that the Italians, who don't believe in assimilation, by the way, guys, um, their red tape makes our red tape looks like no tape. Right? To try to do business in Italy is incredible. I have some personal insights
yeah.
on it. You've got to go to your these local. I don't know how to describe them. These political mafia dons, but they're
Yeah, I was gonna say it's actually worse than the mafia because the
yeah.
mafia is a cleaner payoff system.
Yeah, you just give money.
Yeah.
These guys, you have
Yeah.
to like suck their cock or do all kinds of grovel and pay them lots of money. And if you want to open up a business in Italy, there's this government form, and you've got to go to 2 or 3 guys, and each guy who is a political, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a political don will take a wax stamp of I guess they replaced it in the EU period. It's now a sticker, different colored stickers. In the time I was there, it was this, like they melt. Like I'm sure in the Roman Catholic Church, some of the bishops still do this. It's a very ancient thing where they melt
Yeah.
wax and they have like some metal stamp.
Stamp it on the envelope. Yeah, that still happens.
Fucking amazing, isn't it? It's like connecting to the ancient world in a way, but you have to go to 3 or 4 different guys. Like, the Don of zoning has to give you the green stamp that you met whatever you have to meet to open a new store. Then you've got to go to the business Don who is approved that your store isn't duplicative or isn't going to negatively impact the community. Then you've got like there's 2 or 3. So I watched a friend of mine. It took him like almost 2 years to get all of these little stamps lined up just so he could open up his store. Unfortunately, by the time he was ready to open up his store, the ability to open it took so long to get the approvals, the store never got off the ground. So what do they do? They get a big airplane hangar and they fill it with Chinese who aren't under the purview of the Italian government. They're classified as guest workers, right? And there are literally hundreds. I think there's at least 100,000 of them, at least. And isn't it interesting in these places where these Chinese guest workers are? Wasn't it just 6 months ago their version of the Democrat libtard politicians were making videos, hug a Chinese, don't be a racist, right?
Yeah, it didn't work out. Yeah, as Tim's pointing out here, for some reason, Horsey is flicking us off or flicking me off. Uh, she's seeing and feeling the loss of life in Italy here in New York City.
Yes.
Maybe he put up
That's
the
because his
wrong.
favorite Italian restaurant. I think I know which one it is on the Upper West Side. He can't sit there anymore. It's only
Look, I don't
delivery.
see how this is my fault, but okay.
It's your fault.
Maybe it was a middle finger to the Chinese, and in that case, I don't have any problem with it. I mean, listen, can we talk about this briefly? Can we talk about this really briefly and move on? Because I don't really want to get hung up on talking about the media's spin about how it's racist or xenophobic, to call it what it really is. And thank you. What is it? Die five, throwing out the twin fun bucks. I would have to say, you can't really discuss this development in a medical sense without constructing or reconstructing where the elements of its origination were
Mhm.
from. In a scientific setting, coronavirus is, as you know, a coronavirus expresses nothing but a spherical shaped microbe that creates a flu like virus. They're calling this a novel coronavirus. Okay, that's great, but that in no way justifies how it differs from all the other coronaviruses that don't spread like this or kill like this. So, in order to call it COVID-19, it has to come. COVID-19 is like almost like AIDS to the HIV progression. So,
Yeah.
if it you've got to get to the origination point in order to intellectually be honest with people. Which one are you talking about? Because we've got influenza, we've got this B strain coming up that people might be dying from. What the COVID-19 tests are actually testing for is the strain that originated from the fish markets of the Wuhan province. So therefore, it is a Chinese virus. It is a Chinese virus where it mutated in the Wuhan province. There's no other way to scientifically identify it other than to call it at its derivative point a Chinese virus, more specifically the Wuhan province, whatever virus. So
Yeah. Well, this is
let's just cut past all the bullshit.
the problem that we in the once great America, well, the problem we have now, we have created the Chinese monster, and we now have all the symptoms of a battered spouse with the Chinese. That they come and they beat us, and we are thinking somehow it's something we did. We need to modify our behavior. Don't wear that dress. The husband comes home, sees the dress. I'll get beaten. Therefore, it's my fault. Therefore, I need to be more careful what I wear around my husband.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
got this battered spouse syndrome thing going. And
Especially when they have this reciprocity style, we're going to withhold all medicines that you would otherwise need to have some at least palliative treatment. I mean,
can you,
fuck them, fuck the Chinese.
Adam, can you recall one time? I mean, I'm thinking the Second World War when America withheld raw materials from the Japanese. Since then, okay, since that time, can you recall any instance of America withholding medical supplies from anyone?
No, it's just I mean, the irony here is we literally stopped or stunted the growth of the Japanese Imperial Navy by stopping the flow of American steel, which is where they were getting it. But then we eventually just kind of melted about a quarter of their population at the end to stop it. But you know, uh, Die Five's going back. They're saying, "Oh, just getting set up, so only sent out $2. What do you guys think about the politicians that sold off their stock?"
Uh oh.
We're gonna get to that. I
Uh
mean, that's gonna be
oh.
an issue. That's going to be a ding ding ring ring, an issue for a lot of our people. And I can make it apolitical real quick for you and tell you that we're going to finish up the discussion here that we're having right now. But Die Five, I'm going to tell you right now that if Richard Burr is forced to resign, just because there's a Democrat governor in North Carolina does not mean it's going to be a Democrat senator. It is law that we changed 2 years ago, just in time, coincidentally, if you will. And thank you, Mel, as well. Mel as well. My God, I'm on fire tonight, Glenn. I just can't put myself out. In New York, or I'm sorry, the new North Carolina law, much like other states, says that you must replace the outgoing senator, resigning senator, dead senator, whatever, with one of three picks from the state party, Republican state party of the same, obviously, the same registered party. So if Burr's got to go, chances are we're going to get a better Republican senator in there because Burr wasn't going to run again anyway, and he's up in 22. So I'm not worried about that. I think I'm not worried at all about Kelly Loeffler because I think a lot of us want Doug Collins in there in Georgia anyway. And I think he flows better with the Trump ticket. And I
Hmm.
think that we can probably not have that disjointed crap, about the top of the ticket in Georgia. So that doesn't hurt us. I think the Purdue stuff about Senator Purdue doesn't really work because that's not the same type of sell off that you saw with Burr and certainly with Loeffler. And then the big one is Feinstein. I mean, Feinstein could be forced out, and that right now Adam Schiff is working against her and spreading rumors all over California in hopes that he will become the senator if she is removed or expelled is not something that's actually going to happen, but it is not a violation of the law. So you'd have to shame them into resignation. What they did, by all accounts, is not considered insider trading. So, frankly, again, Congress gets away with murder. I mean, literally on this stuff, they get away with murder. And, it's, yeah, I think I would probably, if I were McConnell, I would at least have Burr, and this is traditional in Congress to have them shut down or step off their chairmanship for intelligence, and so that's fine with me. So we're definitely going to hit that more, but I don't want to move too far off of what we were just talking about. And the American relationship pre World War II was pretty rough. I mean, we had a non-intervention with our European allies, and we let the Germans go a little wild for a while. And we were a lot of the Japanese ships in the Imperial Navy that dominated for a while part of the world and just like took over portions of the southeast. That was made with, in a lot of cases, American steel.
Yeah.
So we cut that off, and when it did, it crippled them because they had no other real access at that point set up. So what we're doing right now is, I think, setting the stage for retribution for China. And I think Trump realizes now that, with all of Europe's problems because of this disease, we might have Europe's help for once. And if Europe gets on board and decides to work with us, we can get a lot of deals done that cut China out of the fold. And matter of fact, same thing goes for the Middle East. And if we can somehow get some semblance of responsibility back into Venezuela, we can undercut Soviet impact on anything OPEC wants to do because we have Saudi Arabia working with us and other Middle Eastern countries working with Saudi Arabia. So we can actually squash or squeeze, if you will, uh, Putin for a long time on the oil markets. That's 60% of their freaking revenue. They don't have anything else. And so what we're doing right now is we're buying up all these cheap strategic barrels right now and putting them in our reserve. So but the problem is, people are right. Eventually, what everybody wants to talk about tonight is, when are we going to have enough data? Is it going to be at the end of this 15-day period that we're going to be able to send some people back to work, open up restaurants, still practice some social distancing, still obviously be vigilant with washing of the hands and all that other type of stuff? But there's a real argument going on between the Koch brother Wall Street Journal section of the Republican Party and the rest of the Republican Party, because some are weighing wealth versus health. And, that's the scale that we're on right now. Can we recover wealth quick enough if it's lost in the name of health? Politically speaking, we've got this deadline of November coming up here. So, Michelle, I mean, I look at, you know, schools are schools. They're not cookie cutter. I mean, my school's different than any other school. And you talk about New York City schools, it's a totally different issue. I think we've complicated life for a lot of people, and we might actually be hurting the whole recovery period by keeping kids out of school. It actually isn't that much related to kids transmitting it to each other. Of course, that is the primary thing, but the fact is that all the other people related to the school, anything, the caregivers, the bus drivers, the people that have to respond when they're sick, the pediatricians that will get overrun. If the kids get sick and they have to start getting tested. So there's a real delicate balance. Like every time you point out to me that something is not helping enough, I can tell you why it'd be worse to go back to it. So with kids, mine are 6 and 7, so they're at a private school, and everything comes over an app now, and they got sent home with a bunch of work. So we're good for a month. And but public schools, they don't really larger public schools don't work that way. So a lot of people are put in a bind, in a bad position, and it's on your perspective here about whether or not you think this is worth it or not. Schools are not nearly the economic impact that you think they are versus shutting down businesses. When you're shutting down businesses and you're shutting down non-essential businesses, which is in some states are now almost everything. And Tom Wolf here in Pennsylvania has already got multiple lawsuits filed against him, claiming he doesn't have the constitutional right to close these things down. Well, if the governor doesn't have the right to close down businesses in a time of a pandemic, the national government does not, the federal government does not. So these decisions are and I don't know if this is good or bad, Glenn, but this is how it works. In New York, Cuomo is very, very conscious. De Blasio, completely unconscious. He's so dumb. But Cuomo is very, very aware that he is in a negotiation with his own population, not the federal government, not anybody else. He needs, you know, a recommendation that his people will accept. And he's going to force the recommendation as firmly as possible without subjecting it as a matter of law onto his people. Newsom is much more willing to go far left Venezuela crazy. But then again, in California, people are much more willing to just assume that that's how things work now. And they're just going to go through with it. But for other states, Illinois is going to run into some potholes this week because once businesses start to really fail in the Chicago area, you're going to see this massive warning that's going to get sent across the entire country. We're talking about Chicago, California, New York, and for the most part, PA and New Jersey, which is basically a quarter of our entire GDP for the entire country. So you can't shut it all down. Not for more than 15 days. I mean, even trying to restart it after 15 days, that's pretty tough, man. That's like leaving an old car with an old battery in your driveway in the winter for 15 days and just trying to get in there and crank it back up. It might, it might, and then again, it might not. So I understand both sides of this argument, but as far as Trump's reelection and the viability of the public's perception of how he's handling this is going to be weighed equally in health and wealth. So if we have too many dead bodies and we make some moves that are perceived by the press to increase fatalities in the name of protecting wealth, guess what? We're going to get killed politically. And if we stay shut down too long and crush and crater wealth and go into like a negative double-digit GDP, then guess what? The Republicans in charge of all the money are going to say we went too far. We locked down our country and killed ourselves over what? Over a disease that people are most likely going to contract eventually anyway. So, it's the health versus wealth argument. That's why I think that this 15-day period of which we're in the middle of is all about gathering data. It's all about gathering specific empirical data so that we know what we're risking. Are we at the same risk level that we're seeing in some parts of Europe? And the chances of that being answered yes, not likely. But we are seeing something that could explode out of control very easily. I mean, let's all be honest with each other. If we relaxed all standards too early and New York City just went about its business, Chicago went about its business, the Bay Area, LA went about its business, everybody, Philadelphia, and everybody just was out and we started up sports league again. If we did all that stuff right now, like everybody seems to want to do, I think we would probably lose about 2-3 million people before the election even gets here. And then trust me, if you lose 2 million people, you ain't getting reelected. So before everybody seems so willing to throw all their eggs in a basket of some kind of like immediate treatment of the two drugs, hydroxychloroquine, and the other one I can't pronounce, but starts with an A. That's mainly antibacterial. Uh, Listen, it might work. We have a short stack of papers that say that this is working in some cases, but like Fauci says, we're gonna do this. We're not gonna deprive anybody of these medicines, but we're also gonna categorize all this stuff. We're gonna have the data. We're gonna have a control group that doesn't, and we're gonna have the people that do. Because if you don't have a control group, just forget about it. It's not real science, and people won't believe it, and there'll be no peer review. So essentially, yeah, it's not the Z-Pack is a different conversation, whatever, that's related to the brief mentions about the couple of strands that are tied to the HIV strains and stuff. But listen, we cannot figure out why some people are asymptomatic. We cannot figure out why some people are barely symptomatic, and then we can't figure out why some people drop dead. In some cases, in their 30s before they even get to the hospital. And it's happening in Italy in some cases, and it's going to be happening in France and Spain. Germany, for some reason, seems to be pretty stabilized right now. So I will say right now that people are coming to me and saying, hey, Trump, he's a little bombastic. He's a little argumentative with the media at these press briefings. But what I say back to them is, since he's taken over the podium, America's approval of his handling of this crisis has gone up 12 points. Can't argue with that. And if you read the comments here, Glenn, like I am, I mean, everybody has an opinion on this, and it's no less or more ingrained in fact than ours, because everybody's got. None of us on here, even the epidemiologist and the virologist and every other clinician and scientist that you talk to they all have different opinions about all this stuff. So it's not surprising that we have different opinions on here.
Did you see Debbie Tyler's super chat? What do you think of Biden starting his co-presidential daily shadow government virus update on Monday?
How did I miss that? I must have missed it. Okay, right there it is. I don't know that that's actually going to happen. If it does, that will just be probably an absolute failure, judging by the rest of his attempts. Um, it sounds almost to me like remember when McCain suspended his campaign to go back to Washington to help Bush solve the financial crisis in the middle of the not in the middle, at the end of the election in '08. We'll see if that turns out the same way for Biden. I think it's a mistake, because what is he going to do except, who's going to listen to Joe Biden talk about this? He's going to have to bring up what, former NIH officials or former CDC, if they can get political with it. Good luck, man. Good luck. That's why I get so fired up at idiots. Of course, not be surprised to hear the name Bill Mitchell associate with idiots, but fire Fauci, fire Fauci. Listen, Fauci and Dr. Birx have formed this level of trust with the Americans, and even with the media, that if you get in the way of either one of what they're doing, be prepared for a backlash, because that's exactly what's going to happen. And as long as we have Fauci up there, who has served 5 presidents, been awarded the National Presidential Medal of Freedom already, respected around the world. As long as we have Fauci up there, basically not saying, Trump is insane and he doesn't know what he's doing, then it's a winning day for us, because Fauci is basically confirming that Trump is following the task force guidelines. And what's Joe Biden going to say? Tony Fauci is a liar? I have people that are telling me things differently. Bad move for Joe Biden, which is why I'm not sure it's going to happen.
But that's the thing, is that what moves did the Democrats have? I don't really. The smart move would be to support the president, and wait for the smoke to clear, and then go back to your super hyper political stance. But the problem is they've built their entire modern Democrat Party on the resist concept, which is resist normalizing this presidency. It's like that meme with the guy sweating, looking at the 2 buttons, and they always put something funny over the buttons,
Yeah.
They're kind of like locked in this thing. Like, we know the right thing to do is pretend to be patriots like we were at 9/11. And we got to do that for at least 3 to 4 months before we go back to being political. But then there's button number 2, which is, if you do that, you've now normalized the Trump presidency, which they it seems they believe if the Trump presidency is allowed to become normal, he can't be
Yeah.
beaten. It seems like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
their
I mean,
idea.
a couple of questions here, or statements that I'm going to address, and one is Tim. Tim represents, the trader mentality. The market reacts to credibility a lot, and he's absolutely right. Fauci has that credibility that settles the market, or could make the market go to hell, which it has a couple times when Fauci lays it out where his worst fear. Um, Cindy's saying, I'm in the chat room that they do not trust Fauci, and I know that's frustrating, but and then what's up? I assume is what the name is. Did anyone see Fauci's reaction to Trump's deep state remark? I actually watched it like 30 times, and I saw him trying not to laugh out loud because he thought it was funny. I didn't see him being embarrassed at all. I saw him react in laughter, and then it was like, oh, wait a minute, the press can see my face. So I wasn't concerned about that at all. Deborah, Fauci's too slow on the malaria drug. Fauci has no control over that at all. None. He is strictly in a policy advisory position. If the HHS and CDC decide we're going to mass distribute the hydroxychloroquine, it's going out. Fauci can't stop any of that. So Fauci's not doing anything on that. You can't really hold him accountable on that, other than he's saying he wants to see real data, not just everybody got better in 5 days. He wants to see the real files. That's all he's saying on that. So, and there's a battle going on between Horsey and Turbine. I have no idea what it's about. So hopefully they can settle that down a little bit. Yeah. Tim is saying that we have the Dem by the balls right now, and I think that you would think we did, but it's clear to me right now that the Dems are going to hold up this spending bill to address the pitfalls financially that the Americans are going through right now, and I think that is all risk right there and no reward. I mean, it just is just insane. It seems like something so dumb that only Republicans would think of it, you know? And there were a couple of Republicans after Hurricane Sandy that said, nah, way too much money. We're not voting for this. Didn't work out too well for those people at all. A lot of them got voted out after that. So I think it's a hysterically stupid move on Chuck Schumer's part and Pelosi's part. But they're very frustrated because the spotlight has been wrested away from them. And it looks as if Mnuchin and McConnell are handling the entire package and no one else really needs to be involved. And then on the medical side of the updates, it looks like Pence and of course Trump have it all under control. So there's no place for the Democrats. And I think that's coming out percolating in the press corps. They're getting a lot of shit from Democrats saying, stop legitimizing Trump, get in there and start talking about things that are going wrong and get
But
numbers that they lied
that's
about.
but you see
Like,
that that's what I see is it's like this they're locked in mortal combat, but it's not they can't win. This is like a Sisyphus. It was like a Sisyphus with the stone trying to push it up the mountain. The more they fight the president now, as long as this crisis is in the media, is in the news, they can't. You're not scoring. There's no way to score points against the wartime president. You can't do it. It never works, right? It never works. It's not going to work for them.
until they get on a carrier before an election with a giant banner that says "Mission accomplished," while you still have 30,000 troops on the ground.
Yeah,
minimum.
but that's not them. The only way to fuck Donald Trump is to wait for him to make a mistake that the American people will readily admit is a mistake. You can't.
Yeah, and
Right?
no one really knows what to believe right now because it all depends on where you live. And nobody, I mean, you have the press legitimately asking the president about his low credibility ratings coming from a member of the press corps who has the lowest credibility rating outside of, whether Americans believe, Baghdad Bob or, some Chinese communist spokesperson. So it's a real give and take here. It's an odd, strange, you know, you got half the number of people in the press room. We have double the briefings we've ever had, but we've got spacing, and you've got some, people from the major networks that feel that having OAN there or some other foreign, friendly foreign outlets makes them more, they just get a little bit more venomous toward the president because they feel if they only get one or two questions, they need to expose the president. And that's the orders that are coming down from the top, um, at all these networks and all these major publications. You, the end of the day, though, the end of the day, we're going to be counting statistics. We're going to be either counting dead bodies or we're going to be counting negative GDP. And so Trump is facing. Let's try to put this in perspective. Uh, with our age difference not being that too great, but our knowledge of history of American history being pretty serviceable. I'm searching for somebody who had to face something of this nature equally between the wealth of the country and prosperity of the country and also the health of the country and the lives, which is typically a wartime decision, but not really, because in a wartime decision, when you go through like a defense procurement act or something like that, you're literally changing Ford and GM and everybody else into making tanks and airplanes and all the other bullshit that goes along with war. Here, we're switching over to ventilators, and we don't really want to force them into that because then it automatically brings along legal ramifications that can be challengeable in court. So what Trump wants to do is say, I'm authorizing this act, but do it so I don't have to tell you to do it. And for the most part, it's working. but the press wants to know if he's enacted it for real or not, or enforced it or whatever. And Trump is trying to walk between the raindrops on that one, because it's something for a Republican president to say we are socializing these factories to get what we need, and that'll just build into this narrative that bigger government is better. So Trump has got a lot of people in his inside circle that say you cannot give any credence to this Bernie Sanders style progressive shit where, when the shit hits the fan, the government's the only one that can do the job. And so realistically, we are a constitutional republic made up of a federation of states. The states have the say for a reason, predominantly. Everything that's not in the Constitution falls under the 10th Amendment, and all of that stuff will be contained or handled by the governors. And when they are in need of financial assistance or reimbursement or strategic contingency assistance, they call upon the federal government. And over the years, we found a way to make that whole thing work. So this is not a federal government problem here. It's not about having 10 million respirators sitting in a FEMA warehouse somewhere. It's about Democrat governors who are so used to talking shit that they never thought for 1 minute that they would be called out on it, that they couldn't produce. You get all these Democrat governors, state of Washington, California, Illinois, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. They react very differently than DeSantis does in Florida. And there's a reason for that. They have been talking this game that the federal government can solve all your problems if you're just willing to put the right people in office at the federal level, when it's not true. It's absolutely not true. And you're trying to get goods or services through the federal government to assist with a state level problem is like going 2 towns, 3 towns away to go to a super retail store to try to get what you want, instead of just going to the retail store in your neighborhood and getting as much product as they have directly. That's what the governors have been failing to do. They have their own vendors, they have their own procurement processes. All of that stuff exists in each state. That's how they do business every day. All they have to do is increase their orders, and they haven't done it, or until recently haven't done it, and decide to lay it at the feet of the behemoth. I mean, listen, if I've got Usain Bolt to run a message for me, I'm not going to call Oprah Winfrey and ask her to run that same message 600 miles away from me. I'm going to go with the fastest, quickest way to get things done, not a fat, larded out, obese, immobilized pig of a federal government that can't react quick enough, because that's not the way we're designed. So, hey, listen, slip Usain Bolt at 20 and get what you need. Don't slip a pork loin to Oprah and decide to wait 2 months and hope you get what you want. Fact is, it's not how it works in our government. If it was, we would be a national socialist country. And one more point before I move on. One more point against these governors, even though they're being nicer to Trump, blah, 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 blah. Most of these governors, talking about Illinois, California, Washington, Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, these governors quite literally recognize that there's no one else to blame. And if they're not getting the job done, there's only one finger left to point at one person. And they're just absolutely politically expedient for them to do it. They're under a lot of pressure. I think Pelosi, Schiff, Kamala Harris, they're all screaming at Newsom to try to make Trump look bad. I think you've got the same thing going on with maybe Wyden up there, in the Northwest, screaming and trying to get Inslee to say something bad, which he's already done many times. And of course, Chuck Schumer screaming at Cuomo every day. And I think de Blasio is taking Schumer talking points, and Cuomo's just not. I mean, when you're the governor, the buck literally stops there, your state, and you feel it in ways that is not felt at the federal level. When you're a governor, if you're a governor with like, I don't know, humanity or something, which hopefully you have, you feel the weight of responsibility about it's just a direct service to the people. The buck definitely stops at your desk. When you're the president of the United States, there is a million, billion, trillion things that are going on at one time, and not only domestically, but everywhere. And you are the leader of the free world, and people are dying at an ungodly clip in Europe right now, particularly Italy. You've got to weigh all this shit out geopolitically at the same time. So it's, I think Trump's under the most pressure that a president right now, back to my original point, and we'll see if you agree. But I think we are under the most pressure on all sides of the die being cast since FDR.
At least it seems that way.
True.
It seems the media and the public have mutually agreed that that's how it looks. The media is portraying it that way, and the people are accepting it. The problem with that is it may not be that, but we could have worse problems than finding that out in a month or two, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
world.
I look at it, you know, never being a student of mathematics or claiming to be proficient. I did unfortunately have to study a lot of actuarial science aspects, and of course, when you get into statistics in general, because political science, the only aspect of your degree is that you have to learn all of the entire um, mosaic, I guess, or whatever they call it, approach to polling and all that other stuff like that that goes into it. And I just look at what's going on in Europe, and I say, what guarantees can I give if I was a politician that what's going on in Italy is not going to occur in a metro area of the continental United States? And, that alone is scary enough that I understand the 15 days. But I also understand the people that after that, my best friend in the world is at one of the most successful pizza shops for the last, I don't even know how many years since I was in high school. And no matter when the economic situation, upturn, downturn, whatever, I mean, business is always good. And this is a very unique challenge because you can still stay open, but then again, you're under the obligation to space your customers out. No one's allowed to sit down, not even to wait for their order. They would like you to keep people 6 feet apart, sometimes outside. But by being able to do business takeout, he can stay in business. And you look at the impact that he's feeling, which is he's saying is pretty moderate. I was thinking everybody's home. They're not going to want to cook. They want to get a pizza, or a sub or something, and it's
Nope,
not happening because it's just
because they're now thinking every kitchen has some coronavirus infected person.
that, or they think let's go to the grocery store and fight everybody else, which is a bad idea. And they go and buy way too much food and they hunker themselves in. I was saying to my wife, um, I think this country's going to come out of this thing. If it lasts 2 or 3 weeks, people are going to gain an average of like 3 or 5 pounds because it's just going to be like they loaded up at the liquor store because they, started to close things down. They bought way too much food, most of which were probably preserved foods or food with a lot of preservatives in them. And it's just a bad idea to engage in that type of behavior because this is America and we've never had to do that before. So I think there's going to be a lot of glycemic index issues going on. And that's the last thing we want because we don't want diabetics going into an episode or shock or coma because then we got to call an ambulance. Then the ambulance doesn't know for sure what you have. They have to break out their equipment, their protective equipment to take you to the hospital. Then they need to sanitize the entire ambulance because it'll be a while before they know if you might have been exposed to COVID-19. Every single normal run of the mill broken bone, asthma attack, diabetic attack, heart attack, anything like that right now where you're requiring an ambulance or an urgent care visit or emergency room, you are complicating our health system. Now, I'm not saying don't go because if you don't, you might die. The point is, I'm telling people again, which I've been saying for a little while now, there's nothing they can do for you if you think you have COVID-19. If you're my age and you've got a sore throat, and you know, by the way, I mean, I don't think she'd terribly mind us mentioning this, but one of our loyal viewers, Stormy comes from a medical family, doctors, nurses all around her. Probably, I don't know if the test results came back already or if not, but probably has been exposed and probably has COVID-19, is recovering. Thank God, and we all pray for her and keep her in our thoughts. But we're gonna start to just out of statistical assurances, I can tell you, we're gonna have people in our fam that actually contract this illness, and that's going to be a reality. But whether or not we go to a testing site, not knowing whether or not we have influenza or nothing, you realize that the most precious thing right now is the equipment, the protective equipment. That's the most, you know, beyond the respirators and all that other shit is like the protective equipment. You realize when you go to these testing sites, Glenn, and when they do the test, it's designed in a way that you know, they're expecting you to perhaps cough or sneeze in response to this tube going up your nose in order to get your sinus cavity. So every time they take a test in one vehicle or a walkthrough, they have to change their entire protective gear. It'd be thrown out and they regarb. So that's just testing. That's the same protocol for every emergency room doctor who's treating somebody who has a fever or a cough or any type of pulmonary distress or respiratory distress. They go into that room, they have to change out of everything that they had after they went into that room. So that's what Tony Fauci is talking about. That's what other people are talking about when they say, listen, if you're just curious of whether or not you have this or not, that's not a good reason to get tested. And if you have no underlying health conditions and you are under the age of 60 and you think you have it, quarantine yourself. And I mean, quarantine yourself from your family. And, you know, if you live with 5 people, then call your doctor and say, it'd be best if I got tested so I know what's going on here. So I don't have to be in a spare bedroom for 15, 16 days. And then they'll get you tested. But if you're a single guy and you're in your apartment and you just started dry coughing one night and you want to just go stumble into a testing, just know that you're taking away the ability of somebody who really needs that test getting tested with the right equipment on and making people more vulnerable that are EMS, CMT, volunteer testers, people that work for HHS. I mean, it's just not a time to be a selfish asshole right now, because it's like basically playing golf in a thunderstorm. You know, you can be the dick that ignores the air horn and just keep playing, and there's a 98.5% chance that nothing is going to happen to you at all. You might get a little wet if it rains. You might want to play. In my case, I don't do that. I get off the course because I don't want to raise, you know, the aluminum shaft of the golf club up into the air. And if you've ever seen Caddyshack, you'll know why. So why would I take that 1% chance or even less? So that's the reason. That's the way you should look at this. As long as you get off the course, in the metaphor here, and keep away from others, social distance, and not infect anybody else, even if you have it. That's the way we're going to get through this. We can't test 10 million people. We can't. You cannot test 10 million people.
10 billion's a drop in the bucket anyway.
10 million is basically
Even if you
the
could.
5 boroughs,
Even if you
Uh,
could test 50 million Americans, what about the other 300 million?
mhm.
But anyway, I'm not going to give any commentary on this because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. I've already said what I thought of all of this a month ago. I'm going to wait till June or July, and we'll see where we're at. I expect,
Yeah, but
you know,
the issue here is, Glenn, is like there's never going to be a demonstrably effective way of saying you were right and
I'm
all the
not
medical
saying
professionals
about
were
right
wrong.
or no, but there are plenty of medical professionals that are not giving the party line. They were doing that during the HIV thing. I mean, this is not the first rodeo, right? I think it's highly
Yeah, but this is the
naive.
most infectious rodeo. I mean, so I mean, if we say
Yeah,
we kept everybody home
this
and we
is
have
the
a lower
most
curve,
infectious rodeo. Okay. So let's see where
yeah,
we're at in July with all this stuff. Because I
yeah,
don't.
but if we're lower than all the other countries,
Yes.
it's because we did more quicker than all of them. And then some people will say it was not
Right.
necessary. We never had to cancel all the
Well,
sports. We
but
never
this
had to.
is the beautiful thing. The beautiful thing is this is a get out of jail free card, shutting down everything. Because even if you're wrong, you're going to claim, naturally, you're going to claim that this is what the deciding factor was. If it turns out to be all these people die, then you're going to say, imagine triple that number of the people who died. You can thank us tomorrow. Please reelect us, right? And if nobody really dies compared to the scare tactics, then you can claim that's because we did these things. There's absolutely no accountability here. I appreciate that. I hope it works to our advantage,
Okay,
right?
well, I like to dabble in this a little bit too, because it's almost as if people are ignoring one thing. This glorious American economy that we've, as I said today in a tweet, we hit Alt Control Delete on this motherfucker and rebooted it,
Mm-hmm.
starting from zero, negative zero, actually. So everybody's going to be frustrated. We had all this great wealth. Well, I got news for you. It doesn't matter if we decide to gamble and try to forge ahead when the entire rest of the world goes out of business, investment goes out of business, everything stops, and our economy folds anyway. I mean, maybe not to the degree that it does if you shut down every restaurant and whatever, but we're going to go in a recession no matter what.
Sure.
So it's up to you whether or not you think like Trump's going to get reelected with a -9 GDP or a -20. The point is, Europe is cratered. There's no investment. There's negative interest rates. There's nobody to pay the debt. Italians have nothing but debt. Spain, nothing but debt. They're going to collapse. Everything's going to collapse. All their bond markets, everything, their debt markets are going to collapse. And China is going to get a second wave. I think anybody with a brain knows that if you pent up and weld in or kill 11 million people, and then all of a sudden try to go back to normal, you better hope this is one major ass seasonal virus. You're going to infect another part of the country,
Yeah.
and that's going to come right back. And where's all the production come from? Where's all the trade agreement money coming from that is supposed to boost our ag markets? It's not there anymore. So even if we preserved us in a bubble and everybody else went to shit for whatever mistakes they made, we still go into a massive recession. 'Cause without the world, where are you going to sell your products to? Where are you going to make your money? And without the world investing in us, because they have no money to invest in us, there's no money to be made. So, I mean, people can't think that this is just an American issue. It's not. I mean, I think that Trump has made a decisive call that we're just going to try to find the middle of the road on this and try to save as many people as we can and not go too far where we start to crater our entire economy. 15 days is going to shut down and shutter a lot of weak businesses. I'm okay. You know what? Weak businesses are going to go. If you can't last 15 days, I don't care if you're a restaurant. I don't care if you're a small business. I don't care if you're an over leveraged big business. If you cannot last 15 to 30 days, you don't belong in the American economy. Somebody's going to swoop in at very low interest rates. They're going to buy you up. They're going to employ your former employees, and we're going to be up and off the ground within 60 days. All right. That's how quick it's going to happen with liquidity going out into the borrowing market. So, I'm not worried about shutting things down for 15 days. And for all the people out there that all of a sudden have this, eureka moment. Oh, this is, Wall Street Journal bullshit op-ed that we're killing our economy for the sake of maybe saving some lives. How the fuck do you know? We're not even, what are we, halfway through the 15-day guideline periods? I mean, how the fuck would you know? You wouldn't. And first of all, Donald Trump didn't make the decision to say New York shut down your businesses. Donald Trump didn't make the decision California shut down your businesses. Donald Trump didn't call Illinois and say shut down your businesses. So how the fuck is this at the feet of the Trump administration? I would love to know that, because a lot of lesser people in the White House would have shut fucking trading floors down. They would have shut the indexes down.
Yep.
Trump didn't do that. So tell me, all these people that are saying this is overblown and Trump is going too far. What did Trump do? Trump put out CDC guidelines. You don't have to take them. You don't have to
It's
do
not
what he
like
says.
Trump didn't order any of these governors to do what they did. They just did it.
Well, look at what
Yeah.
DeSantis is doing. He's getting sued because he didn't close the beaches down quick enough. Everybody and every governor is going to deal with this shit the way they want to. Did you hear Jim Justice, that freaking overly wealthy hillbilly in West Virginia, give his address to West Virginia tonight? He basically said, listen, I'm not shutting anything down, but if you idiots continue to do what you're doing and spread it around, I'm going to have to shut everything down.
Right.
And you see, this is a states' right issue. Going after Trump as if he issued a national protocol that people have to shut down. It's just ridiculous. The NIH, the CDC, the HHS, they all put out their collective protocols, social distancing, shutting down non-essential businesses. There's no law attached to it. There's no authority attached to it. There's no executive order attached to it. These are all issues that governors have to work out for themselves. So I think, again, a lot of the people that have been dying to take shots at Donald Trump in the Wall Street Journal world and the old National Review world and the Weekly Standard old world, whatever's even left publicating, they have been dying to take a shot at Trump on this stuff. And in reality, what has he done? He's shut off commerce briefly with Europe and China, but we're still allowing cargo to come through. So we're not killing our entire trade industry. And we decided to close our borders with Canada and Mexico. And if you read the articles today, you'll see that it's not at all true. And people are coming across, as they have always had,
There's a shock.
to buy whatever they want and go back to their countries.
That's surprising.
None
huh?
of it's true.
No, I mean, every time we hear there's something going on the border, it always turns out that there's more people coming through. I never hear anything like, oh, something's going on at the border. Oh, and there's almost no one coming through now. It's always
Well,
the
listen,
opposite.
let's be honest. Our guys down there at the border right now are looking at Mexicans who have like almost non-existent cases. And they're looking at them coming into the U.S. and they're going, yeah, really? Seriously? You want to come in here? By all means, go ahead. Come in and buy something. I mean, really, it's just getting ridiculous. I mean, if we can't give 15 days to make sure that we're not
Oh,
going
I
to
don't think
be.
listen, I don't think anyone credible is opposing 15 or maybe even 30 days of this initiative. Politically, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you need whether the president knows more than he's telling, about what is going to happen in the next 8 to 12 weeks. I don't know. But no matter what happens, I think if it look in 3 months, if we look back on this, is like, wow, we really, compared to what actually happened, we really did overreact. No one is going to take a hit for that.
Well,
You
like you
know,
said, we'll never
like
be able to
having too
prove it.
much insurance. Is somebody going to insult
Yeah.
Glenn for having $10 million of insurance for his house, and it turns out I only needed 2 million? No one is going to say you're an idiot, because guess what? If you need 1 million and you got a $10 million policy, that means you had 9 more million wiggle room for worse things to happen that didn't happen. It just shows that you're a little bit more on the ball than most. So I don't see that that's going to be an issue. The issue would be if things go really bad, things go very much south, then every half measure that could have been a full measure, that will be a point of attack by Trump's enemies. Like if you could have shut down something 100% and you did it 50% and 10 million people died, I think that they can make a lot of political hay, right? So the risk is not doing this, right? The risk is business as usual. And I think that would be the mistake. Although I don't think we're going to see the kind of the kind of scaring that we're seeing now. I just don't see things going that badly. But hey, I could be wrong. This could be the big one. We might be getting huge numbers of people getting it and dying, and Trump will look like a genius for shutting off the Chinese from coming here and closing the beaches, and DeSantis closing the beaches in Florida. I don't see,
Yeah.
where's the political downside in being cautious, right?
I don't think that policy is going to change anytime soon. I think Trump's going to like punish China for quite a while here, and he's definitely going to put Europe on notice because what's the point of us? We got our people largely back,
Yeah.
repatriated, as they say. So we're going to go through this quietly, through a longer period of the time of isolation that we're in right now. And like I said, if this thing is done within, I'm going to say 20 business days,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, you see how things go. We'll have a lot of data after another week of this.
Right.
But the people that are severely strained, hopefully we can get this package done. If the Democrats stand in the way of it, God help them.
Yeah.
If we can get a little cash in their pocket, you start to turn the ship right side up. It's still going to be waterlogged. We
Mm-hmm.
got a lot of bailing out to do. Nobody that ever does or engages in stock buybacks to increase their own value is going to get any bailout. I think Trump has been very clear about that, and that's something we agree with the Democrats. And I don't think Warren Buffett's going to cry because I think Berkshire Hathaway will be just fine.
Yeah.
But there'll be some other people that'll get hurt. But you know what? Maybe they deserve to be hurt. Maybe they've floated by without being the most efficient capitalist venture that they possibly could be. What this does is it does call the herd in the corporate world and small business world. If you're living off credit and you can barely pay your employees, then maybe that business isn't supposed to live. Maybe we're into some level of economic Darwinism here. And then we have other industries that did succeed and did grow during this period, and they will hire you. And certainly, if your restaurant is out of business and because you couldn't afford it, you own that building or you're releasing it, someone in there is going to get an incredible rate to come in from the bank and lease it at a lower rate and bring that restaurant back online. If they were smart, they'll hire the same waiters and waitresses. And if your business goes out and you have to sell the building because it's the only liquidity you have left to retire off of, some person's going to come in there and make a killing off of buying that building and restarting that business. It's just a matter of, can we get it done quick enough that we can get the turnaround in late third quarter where we start to get indicators that things are back on the upswing before the election. That's what it's all about. And so again, it's health versus wealth. If you're really willing to see states like California, New York, and Illinois struggle, I understand, because you're thinking, well, we don't need these states anyway. for the presidency. However, I will tell you that most people who live up here in our area know that there is no difference depending on where the breeze is blowing between New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania. It just doesn't exist. If they get hit, we're going to get hit. And if we get hit, Ohio gets hit, Virginia will get hit. And there's no way to separate it, no way to stem that tide. So if New York and California, by being the most populous states, got hit the hardest, that's going to hurt our GDP more than anything else. You can't dance around that. You pile up dead bodies in the streets in New York City, and all of a sudden things can go dystopian pretty quick. And what's happening in Italy is borderline dystopian. And you got to arrest that process very quickly. And I think we're going to have a joint attitude adjustment with China, because I think it's just at the end of this game, I think we'll be all right. I think a lot of people will be all right. I think a lot of people will be dead, but not to the fantastical tune of what people are speculating. But I think it's going to be, and Putin better watch himself. But I think it's going to be, Xi holding that hot potato himself, and the rest of the world minus Putin and Maduro and others will hold him accountable. And maybe that's what we need to reboot the whole situation. Maybe that's what we need to go buy American and repatriate businesses, bring it back. And I'm talking up to and including Apple, to be honest with you.
Listen, this president has helped the Apple guys more than any other president has helped that company. So I really am hoping that they get their act together. The problem is, I mean, I have to go back so many decades now. I'm always making the assumption people know what I know, and they don't. Right? So bear with me. Our problem, the reason we're in this situation now is there's literally 30 plus years of being asleep at the wheel when it comes to the shenanigans that American corporations have been engaging in without restriction. And all of these things are tied together. It's not like Apple was always made in China. It wasn't. Right? I had an Apple computer when no one owned computers, and they were made in California by hand. The first Apple computer had a wooden case, and it was made by Steve Wozniak and a couple other guys in the garage. There weren't many made. The Apple II was the first one that they made quite a lot of, but they were made here. And virtually all the components were American. Some were made in Japan, not many. But somehow we went from that to everything, production-wise, being outsourced to foreign countries. And it's accepted. And people in your side of the world, the political class, are addicted to the money donations of the people who are doing these things. In effect, the political class becomes shills for the money guys. Because I have no money compared to what Apple, the power that Apple has. If that guy, Tim Cook, has problems, the president's going to return his call. If I've got problems, I can't even get the fucker here in my local county to return my call. I have to go and stalk them, right? But that's life. But what we're finding out now is that all of this optimization, I watched in the 90s and the 2000s, business optimizing and then optimizing the optimization and to the third, fourth, fifth power, to a situation where I was thinking about this today. When I used to go to a supermarket in 1972 with my mother, they had a whole area behind the shelves that only the employees I would sneak peeks back through those doors, and they had tons and tons of stock back there. And the stock would be pulled out and replenished on the shelves multiple times a day. But there is nothing like that now. Walmart, what you see is what you get. The back room is just for the employees to have coffee, um, and maybe store some vehicles and cleaning supplies. Everything is just in time, right? So the trucks are coming like clockwork because of this, for the fourth power optimization. We are so optimized that literally they don't want to have to store a single box of cereal. Everything is on the shelves, and they have all these algorithms and studies and data crunching that they know pretty much to the cereal box how much of every product needs at particular store in particular regions, how much cereal of this brand needs to be stocked in this week of this month based on 5 years of selling data. And everything
Yeah.
works great until it
Until
doesn't.
this.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah.
And this is the problem I see that we're having now is we've got 30 years of pretty much uninterrupted good times economically. Sure, the line goes up and down, but the rug has never really been pulled out. When you shut down the economy for 2 weeks, now you're entering territory that America hasn't really experienced since the 40s. Right? Here's the question I had when you were talking earlier. There was a day where somehow Ford made the decision, we're going to start building military stuff and we're not going to really be focusing on building cars for the consumers. Did the government order them to do that? Or did the government have a meeting with them and said, listen, you guys need to figure out how to start building us tanks because we've got to go kill Hitler and then Tojo? Were they ordered to do it? Did they agree to do it?
Yeah, I think they did it before the corresponding legislation was even authorized because they knew it was coming.
Remember, the government also gave them a giant ass contract as
Of
well.
course. I mean,
So
listen,
I'm just
I've
saying
long
that there are
said,
ways to make these things happen. Trump doesn't need the government could simply start ordering from these companies. You need, hey, listen, could you fill an order of 5 million gas masks for us? And they can weigh that against the uncertainty of what they've got now. Wait, you're saying I can have an order for 5 million? Yes, a 6 month, 5 million piece order, and we can pay half up front and half upon delivery. You don't need to order anyone to do anything unless the government
yeah,
doesn't want to pay for the material. If they want some kind of
and
donation, right?
here's the difference that I draw into this whole wartime presidency, defense authorization act stuff. But my problem is that when we go into that mode that we did for World War II and we're producing this massive military industrial complexes, is that we took that capital that we produced, we paid for it, but then again, we used that capital for 30 to 40 years
Yeah, we did.
to establish world dominance as a superpower. That doesn't happen by making 10 million ventilators. All right. So the chances that we don't have this thing effectively vaccinated, even within 8 months, never mind a year, are probably less than 10%. I think it's going to happen. So what exactly are we going to do with all these ventilators? So you're not actually making any long-term economic or military progress by making this type of thing. So it's a little different to say to Ford or GM or Tesla even, you guys produce 100,000 ventilators for us. We're going to
Right.
pay you for them. When those ventilators are done, where are they going to go? What are we going to sell them on the cheap to hospitals? No, we're going to put them in some FEMA freaking warehouse
Right. They're
somewhere,
going to
and we're
be
probably never
warehoused.
going to need
Right.
ever.
But that's how it works, right? Look, somehow or other, the Israelis have two. I think they've got two gas masks and the requisite cartridges for those masks for every Israeli citizen, and they've had them for over 20 years. Whenever the chemical gas threat, maybe early 90s, um, they say we're not on YouTube. This is why I got to stop
Well,
looking at comments, because you know what? I'm
yeah,
in the
I'm
middle of.
looking right at
I'm
YouTube,
trying
so
to,
we're
to, to
here.
think of something here. And look, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna hit the refresh here, and let's see if we're on YouTube. Okay, since my train of thought
I
is gone.
think
Oh,
we are
look,
because
we're
I'm
on.
sharing it
We're on
myself.
YouTube. So really, you're not on YouTube. Who is this person? Happy Camper 444. I'm not on. You're all y'all. What is y'all? You all? Um, I think we are on YouTube. Go to MAGA
Well, you
Coalition.
collect your thought, finish your thought. I'm going to get an ice ball while you're doing it.
I don't know what an ice ball is, but it sounds good. All I have is this crappy diet soda. Oh well, I'm on. Listen, everyone on the YouTube side, I can see your comments. So let me just ask you, people on YouTube, press 1 if we are on YouTube. Oh, you can't see tonight's show. Well, then you should go to magacoalition.com, and the first post is an embedded YouTube player, which will bring you. You can watch it right there, or you can click the title in the YouTube player. It'll bring you right here. Yeah, that's because we were having some trouble. Thank you. You don't need to keep pressing 1, guys. I can see. Yes, and if you do subscribe to our channel. Yeah, Periscope's chugging along nice tonight. Probably because no one's really using Periscope anymore. So there's the benefit. I mean, they don't have a lot of users compared to YouTube, and so they're not really getting slammed. All right, now where was my thought? I had 2 points. I wanted to make. The first one was I made it, which was this wartime thing, and the second one was the just in time. Yeah, the just in time changes to our economy, and then there was a second point that connected that idea. Um, well, yeah, the Israelis and the gas masks. That's it. Thank you. That's it. The unserious times that we live in. That was my ultimate point for tonight. Is that our problem isn't gas masks, and it's not. We're arguing over these like symptoms, not the actual problem. Because in Israel, the problem was that Saddam Hussein and Iran and all these other countries are threatening to send chemical warfare. Right, that was their problem, and their solution was. I'll repeat this for Adam when he comes back, because now I remember the point now. Okay, so now I remember the point. The point was that somehow when the Israelis felt 20, 30 years ago, when the threats were from Iran and other countries, we're going to start using chemical and biological warfare against the Israelis. Their solution was to make sure every Israeli in some storage area, there were gas masks available for every man, woman, and child, the entire population. And they've kept those stores up to date. So if the chemical weapons start dropping from the sky, they have plans how to shelter their people, how to get them out from the whatever. There are plans in motion there. And about 6 months or a year ago, I made a comment which apparently resonated with some people. I tweeted something like, "We live in unserious times. And as a result, we have unserious leaders." And so I think what we're seeing here, you kind of said that without putting it in that way, that these Democrat governors, it's like the first time that any Democrat in their living memory, because none of these Democrats who are in power were around during World War II. So it's been longer than most of the people, that all of the people in power can remember directly, that they are actually on the hot seat. I mean, you kind of were hinting at it, that for most of these big blue cities, they've had a good 40 years of being able to bullshit any way they wanted, never being held accountable, because ultimately none of this crap is really life and death for the majority of the people who are their citizens. Sure, people in Chicago get gunned up and die in the ghetto over there, but most people in Chicago don't live there. and they don't really know, and they don't really see it, and they don't really care. But it's completely different now when every person, especially even the rich people, now are fearful of using a public lavatory, right? This is getting real really fast. And I think that the ultimate changes that will happen in this country, that I think we're going to start living in more serious times, and that will require different types of politicians to be elected. I think this
Well,
kind,
yeah, I think it would. I think you're right. I think it requires a different type of voter to decide on who is a serious politician. I mean, the platitudes won't work anymore. The hyperbole won't work anymore. Talking points won't work anymore. Yeah, I think a lot. You know what happened after 9/11? I mean, we put more military active and retired personnel in Congress than we have like in the entire, since right after World War II. So
yeah.
I think that depending on how we handle all this stuff, and I really think going back to your point, last time Americans have really interacted with the idea of a national guard being required for a governor to maintain control was civil rights. And civil rights was inherently a domestic situation that required federal government intervention, or else states would have just gone ape shit because there was still such political will in the South to stick with desegregation, ignore the Supreme Court. There was all kinds of situations like that back then, but this is different.
But that
Like that was
didn't,
life and death
the
to a very small degree.
listen, in the
This is
1960s,
big,
the civil
big life and
rights
death.
movement didn't tank the economy.
No, no, no. But this is when the federal government had to go into states and intervene,
Yeah,
and
true.
and that is not going to happen here unless something just chaotic breaks out in one of these states. Looting is going on. I mean, my first candidate would probably be Maryland, just because of Baltimore. You know,
You think
but
Maryland?
I don't think
Yeah.
we don't want that, and I think that's why you see the tweets coming out of the NSC and from the general of the National Guard saying that these are all unfounded rumors. There is no national quarantine plan, and we couldn't do that even if we wanted to. There'll be no law enforcement capabilities by military personnel developed by the administration, and that's going to be a true point. DeFi back in the house with premature and asking you to predict the way future is going to go, but what is your feeling about influence? I can't. I mean, I would love to, and I get that question literally every day
Mm-hmm.
in Twitter DMs, and really, I know futurist. I think it's a ridiculous profession to be in, but I am not able, even with all of the knowledge that we're getting on a daily basis from not only across the world but from here, but we can't even trust the information that we're getting anywhere. I don't even know if I trust a lot of it coming out of some of the states we're getting it here. And then you want me to couple that with the potential wealth pitfalls and then marry out a an equation or a formula of how this will impact the president's reelection efforts. Obviously, the answer is we were going to win by a pretty substantial margin had things continued to go the way they were going to go. I mean, I think that Biden was a challenge if he could keep his mental faculties, but then we saw that he couldn't even keep those. And that, that wouldn't be enough to keep him competitive in states like Florida, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And then once you're not competitive in those states, you really just kind of go back to the map and see that Trump is going to win at least 300 electoral votes again. Now we've kind of redrawn everything. This could go from a historical landslide loss for Trump, or it could be a
The other
pretty
one.
healthy win for him.
Yeah.
I don't see any in between. I don't see any in between here. This isn't 2004, because what we were arguing about in 2004 was gay marriage and how long we wanted to stay in the Middle East and whether the mission was really accomplished, or all that horse shit. What we were arguing about in 2012 was, is Mitt Romney really capable of holding the standard bearer flag for the Republican Party and being something that we truly believed in enough to come out and knock out an incumbent president? The answer was, of course, at that time, no. So, I mean, this is a very different reelection for an incumbent president, and it could be Clinton Dole in '96. Obviously, if we do everything right, if we do everything wrong, this could be something that we've never seen before. It would be. I mean, even in '92 when Bush lost in the middle of a recession, he lost within 8 months of having like an 88% approval rating, uh, based on the operation of freeing Kuwait. So he had a third party getting like 18%. That mattered a little bit too. So I
That,
don't
don't
know
you
that
think that's
there's
one of the main reasons why they're not really that election? You can't really draw any real.
there's no parallel.
Yeah, it was kind of a spoiler. Like the storm hit in just the right way on that 1 in a billion thing to knock the clock tower to knock the clock
Well,
tower
then let's
down.
go back. Then let's go back to 1930. Then I guess. I mean, um, or was it 32? Whenever the hell Hoover got,
Hmm.
Herbert Hoover got absolutely wiped out because he didn't have the answers to the Great Depression.
There it
So I
is.
guess it was
But
2 or
this is what
whatever.
I'm saying, right? Is that we I've noticed since the end of the Cold War, America has become less and less serious. We now live in an almost juvenile time where there's such a disconnect from what I'm seeing are the problems and what people are arguing over and the politicians are arguing over, that I've become contemptuous of this country, my fellow Americans, and I've been that way now for, let's see, about 15, 20 years. Now I'm seeing people are becoming more serious. Why? Because now they might die. You see, it's one thing to say, oh, some people in the military might die by getting,
Or their parents, or their spouse,
but
or
who,
their children. You're
but
right.
that's
Yeah.
not, no one is getting drafted anymore, and they did sign on the dotted line to join, and that is the military life. And as much as we don't, I heard, listen, 20 years ago I was listening to some libs talking in their kitchen, and one lib said to the other, this was during the what year was this? Probably it had to be yeah, it was right after George W. Went into Iraq. And the one lib said to the other, who was much older, this is going to be like Vietnam. People are going to rise up and they're not going to take it. We've got like 3,000 people died in Iraq and Afghanistan in our military. People are going to take it. They're going to go to the streets. And the older lib said to this girl, I don't think so. He goes, in Vietnam, we were losing people every day, plus anyone and everyone was getting drafted. Now they're not. And this is Lib talking to Lib. I'll never forget this. He said, so as long as there's no draft, this issue isn't going to work for us. Right?
Plus 3,000 dead Americans on our soil for the first time. That also helps
That
quell any.
also gives us the reason that provided the impetus to get this thing done. I'm just wondering now. You're going to die. That's why I was kind of making fun of it. We're all going to die. You're going to die. Maybe you're going to die. Hey, are you dead yet? But this is a real thing. Is that 4 weeks ago, no one was thinking that there's something out of my control might kill me. No one
Yeah.
is thinking like
And,
that,
and
right?
and right now, as we speak to all of you, including ourselves, Glenn and I mean, there's a 2 in 10 chance that we could either any one of us on here or us ourselves could die or become seriously ill.
Yeah.
And
I
think
don't
about
think
that.
it's that high for me. Maybe for you. I'm
But
completely
well, yeah, I mean,
quarantined now, right?
we all have circumstantial differences.
But I'm just saying, look,
Well,
this is real.
you have to watch certain things. Your underlying illnesses mean you can't just order a package and decide you're just going to like open up that package and
Sure, I
then
can.
finish
That's exactly what I do.
your sandwich. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to be careful about shit like that. where I
Well,
have to be careful of, like, just getting coughed on or being stupid
look,
and forgetting to wash my
all I'm
hands and
saying is
touching
that
a
we are at a point
surface.
now where the electorate has an actual fear that they and or their family might die.
Yeah, mortal.
And this is the first time in my lifetime. Well, actually, is that true? No, it is not, because the same there was to a lesser degree during Vietnam, right? In the early 70s, before we left Vietnam, there was that feeling that my kids might get drafted and die. And that definitely drove some of the politics. I would argue it drove it to Nixon, but okay. But that it wasn't.
Yeah. I mean, but you also have 32 on record now, and we also have 44 on record. Where in 32 it was like, who's going to save this country, or are we just going to collapse and die? And then in obviously 44 it was like, okay, we're going to war again, and we might lose. Existential threat. I'm sending off all my sons to
Yeah,
war, and it's been that long. Literally, I mean, Vietnam is, I guess, the closest our generations can picture some of this stuff, because of the fact that if you weren't going to college or you were in junior college, or you were kind of a flunky in high school, you were getting drafted, man. I mean, you were getting
sure.
drafted. You were gone. You were
Everything
gone
when
over.
everyone had a number, right? And
Yep.
so there were all games that could be played, but even then, who was at risk? Males between the ages of 18 and 22,
Yeah,
23.
you're right. I mean, they had a fit system here. Here, we don't have any of that. I mean, this is yeah,
That's what
sure.
I'm saying.
Males are
You're
always
gonna
going to
die.
die.
You're gonna die.
You're gonna die. You might
Everyone. Your
die.
dog might
Yeah,
die. The
yeah,
mailman may already be dead. Where are you gonna get mail now, huh? I mean,
yeah.
there is no neat cutoff like those two libs talking in that kitchen 20 years ago. Like, well, only 2,000 people die. Not like Vietnam or 50,000. It's not the numbers game potentially in people's minds, the voters' minds right now, is they're thinking like 10 million people are going to die. That's where people's heads are at. I mean, I'm not dumb. I can see what
Well, the
people are talking
CDC is
about.
saying
Right.
legitimate models are going to point to, in this season alone, meaning
Right.
between now and the end of the summer, 1.7 million dead,
There it
which
goes.
that's crazy
Of
if you
course it
look
is.
at like what you're seeing right now on your screen, which is like what, 300 or so. To get us from 300 to 1 point whatever, or even 1 million in a matter of half a year, I don't know if you could vote back Jesus Christ for a second term. I mean, if it would go that out of control, they're going to pick the opposite of whatever is going on. That's what America is all about. Now, getting back to some questions, super chat, Jen Levelate, Biden, Dems want China and everything. Trump talking no China for 30 years. Trump is not talking no China for 30 years. Trump is one hand saying, we've got to get away from pharmaceutical assistance and drugs that we require from them. But he's also saying they've got to buy $50 billion worth of our agriculture because we have a deal with them. So he's not saying no China at all by any means. And Bill follows up to Jen's question. Asked this once before. Do you think we move from a service industry to a manufacturing one now that this is a globalism killer? That would require us to get reelected at minimum. And then after that, have like Mike Pence or Pompeo get elected. I mean, I think we would need, judging by what happened in our country before, and Bill's, I think around our age, he understands this. It took about 20 years to kill us between the enactment of NAFTA and bringing China into WTO. It took about 20 years for us to wipe out our manufacturing sector, and then we started to successfully attack private unions. And once we did that, we kind of killed off even more industry, because the only ones left were in a couple right to work states over the last 10 years. Everything else went to Mexico or even further south. So it's going to take a long time for us to bring a manufacturing sector back. Long time. But Trump was walking down that road, but this is going to complicate it for us. I mean, we are already set back right now, Glenn. If we decided that tomorrow none of this ever happened and it's not real, and we're going to pretend that the virus isn't real,
It doesn't
we're going
matter
back to
anymore. The
work.
die is cast. We're locked into
Yeah,
whatever we're
but
locked
let's
in.
just say that we decided tomorrow, oh, this was all scam. We're going back. The matter of shutting down the American economy in the largest states and the largest economic drivers, you're going to automatically go into a recession, because the strict definition in the textbook of a recession is a zero or a negative GDP growth in successive quarters, or quarter or successive quarters. You should go with successive quarters. We are lined up to go into that. I mean, there's almost no way out of that. And then you have to try to quantify all of this with lives saved. And to your point, we'll never be able to prove how many lives we saved.
Which is great.
Ever.
That's good. You're not going to be listen. You can't. There's no way demonstrably to end this argument will be going on in 50 years from now. In textbooks, we'll present this as a split page. People who believe this.
That's what I'm telling my kids right now.
Yeah.
This is something that they're going to read, or that their kids are going to read about in a textbook. This is huge. What we're doing right now, no matter what the result is, what we're doing right now is something that is unheard of in American, well, history. Really, I mean, we've never done this. I mean, if you really want to think about it, Londoners were moving around and being more productive while they were getting bombed to shit by the fucking Germans 12 hours a fucking day than we are right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
you want to talk about wartime conditions.
as I said last Saturday, that generation is no longer here. We do not measure up to them in any way. And the world that we've created, I see it as weak and pathetic. And so don't even bring up that generation. Listen, if my father was alive today, he would be laughing his ass off. First at Fauci. He knew Fauci. Right? He used to say he was a like a hospital administrator. Fauci's good because Fauci is that guy that can talk to non-scientists about these things. But the guys who actually are in the laboratory don't like him because they see him as a politician, not as a scientist, right? You know what I'm saying?
Well, you don't survive 5 administrations unless you're a politician.
Well, that's what I mean. You notice that there are people, should I even mention, I'm just going to say there are people who are calling for him to be fired on Twitter and other places. And they're using as the proof a WikiLeaks of him making some comment to Hillary that, basically, oh, good to see you're on your feet. No one can keep you. You can't be kept down. Your health or whatever. And they immediately come to the conclusion that, you see, Fauci loves Hillary. And
never mind the fact that he knew her personally and worked very closely with her husband during that administration.
Well,
I mean, give me a
and here's the thing: how many times in the corporate environment are you sending emails or letters or memos to someone above you in the chain of command that you absolutely despise? But of course, in the world of the conservative treehouse and other dumb fucks, there can only be one explanation for everything, right? So, I'm sure you could dig up in my past. I've sent out emails and memos congratulating or even heaping praise on people that I hate. Absolutely hated. And 5 years later, I celebrated on the death of their career. It took me 5 years to destroy them. And once they were gone, I just got drunk and pulled out my penis and shocked everyone because I was so happy that I finally got rid of it. And so what's the proof that, I found this old memo that Glenn sent to this guy. How could he really hate him? And why is he celebrating? According to this memo, he wished him a happy new year. It's just, do you understand why I'm slowly losing my mind here, Adam? I really.
Yeah, I mean, if you, it's like because we're doing this every day. You know what I mean? We're going through this period every day of news cycles. A lot of people forget that this is like manna from heaven for the news cycle. I mean, obviously, all they have is to try to make Trump look bad during this period. I mean, this is just like it's nonstop. And what are we going to get? We're going to get fatigue. And when you get fatigue, you get people tuning out of regular news sources and you go on to where? Twitter. And they're like, oh, well, that Bill Mitchell guy said Trump was going to win in 216. And I'm going to go back and look at him. And all of a sudden you see Fauci's got to be fired.
Right.
Fauci's costing 5,000 points on the Dow. Like he even knows what the Dow is. I mean, do you think that Bill Mitchell knows what the Dow Industrial Jones is? Do you think that Bill Mitchell has any money invested in any index? The
No.
answer to that is, of course,
No,
no.
but he's just LARPing. And so
Of
is the
course.
conservative treehouse. They're just LARPing because it doesn't cost anything. Even some of my friends, and one of them in particular, who's a billionaire, and I think you know who I'm talking about. I think
Yeah.
he's now, for the first time in his life, discovered the joy of LARPing. And all you have to do is get out there and make these very like insane type of draconian statements to try to stir
Yeah.
things up and get clicks. It's the oldest trick
It
in the book,
works.
man. It does work. The problem is both you and I have already done all of that years ago, and we realize what a trap it is. And we're trying to do the opposite by saying, look, I don't think 2 million people are going to die from this thing, but I don't think 2 million people need to die to destroy our reelection chances. So all I care about is the reelection. And if Donald Trump has to become FDR in every way to get reelected, I will support it. I am no longer a
You
doctrinaire
know,
anything. It's whatever it takes to get him reelected, I am there to support it. I don't want to hear these assholes talking about firing Anthony Fauci. Fauci, by the way, guys, and I don't like him. So let's just get this. So in my family, we don't like this guy. Okay? But none of that matters to me now. All I'm seeing is Fauci is on TV with him every day, and it's helping the president. So I think it's great. I think he should be there every fucking day, and all these other people too. And I like the president being there every day because every day he's being there talking to the population is another day the people who are on the fence about Trump are getting acclimated to the idea that, yeah, he is a good president. He's trying. He's not as bad
yeah.
as people have been telling me. He
I mean,
seems to care.
and they also look at Fauci and they're looking at Fauci saying, okay, if something really
Right.
unseemly was going on here, Fauci would
Call him on it.
harumph
Yeah.
and yeah, get off the stage,
Right.
whatever.
Because that's
The
his
thing with
job.
Fauci is,
His job is to give that imprimatur of the scientific community on what the president's saying.
I look at Fauci as you would a practical weapon against what we're facing.
Mm-hmm.
And even if he had worked for Democrat presidents prior, and maybe Bill Clinton and Obama and Fauci got along a lot better than he did with Bush or whatever, I don't really care. But I look at Fauci like you would in a home invasion scenario where you've got an enemy in your house. Are you going to not use the German Luger that your grandfather brought home from World War
Yeah,
II
right.
because it's a Nazi weapon? No, you're even if you don't agree with everything, you're going to fire that. Which, by the way, could probably go through two intruders in one shot because it was a finely crafted weapon. Leave it to the Germans to do that. But that's the way I think politically. He's a tool. He's a weapon against this virus, and if he has a real problem, he's going to make a fuss and it's going to be bad news for us. So that's all the more incentive for Mike Pence to stand in between him and the president, and of course with Dr. Birx as well. And Dr. Birx, by the way, I want to point out is a proud graduate of Hershey Med, PSU medical school here, and she's not on stage one day and people are like, oh God, what's happening? I mean, so these people are becoming like daytime figures.
Right.
We need them here. Not necessarily you and me or a lot of other people here, but regular people out there are getting used to getting that. Certainly seniors that are retired want to see both of them there. And listen, if Trump was that bad, I know my parents complain, other people complain to me. I wish Trump wouldn't really be there, let Pence do it. And I say what I told you earlier. He went from, 43% only approval rather, up to 55 approving of his response to this thing, because he was there. He put himself out there. And as president, you've got to do it. And you watch all the movies with like, oh, the aliens are coming or something bad's happening, Mr. President. We've got to evacuate you. Remember, most of the movies, the president always says, "I'm staying. I'm going to be here. I don't want to give a message to the public that I'm panicking." It's always the same, whether it's Morgan Freeman in the movie with the asteroid coming or whatever, or whether it's Danny Glover in the John Cusack movie 2012, or even Bill Pullman in Independence Day. You've always got that president who doesn't leave because blah 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 blah. President Trump is there every day. He's a germaphobe who probably fears this goddamn virus more than you and I do, and he is there every day. And I think it's a credit to him. And he has to fight the media, because if he does not challenge the media on the facts openly in front of the country is going to assume that the media is right,
Right.
that there's something hidden, that the truth is not being told. So I think that yes, Mike Pence does a better job of challenging the media and undercutting their arguments and doing it in a better, more politic way. But with Trump, the media is almost afraid to get caught being wrong, and they are. And he hits them, and we make it go viral on the internet. That's why we're winning right now. The only thing that we can't beat, and I told this to my friends, the only thing we can't beat is dead body in the streets. When we get dead body in the streets, well, there's nothing we can do politically to beat that. And there might be something we can do to supercharge a program to get around unemployment and business failures. But I'll tell you what, you start seeing bodies in the streets, literally stacked outside of overwhelmed hospital systems, which could happen like that. Um, we probably, those images, I don't think we get reelected if those images happen.
I'm not so sure. All I can tell you is that the generation that raised me and educated me fought World War II, by and large. And when I was young, the common knowledge of that generation was that FDR got 3 terms because of the fear. That generally people don't want to switch horses when you're in a life and death struggle. Now, that could be wrong now. I don't know. Maybe things have changed. Maybe people have changed. But I'm not so convinced. I think that, the Normandy invasion, what is it, like 156,000 people died?
Well, I mean, you got to go back the decade before that and live through the Dust Bowl ramifications and get through it. And the FDR period was of such extreme humanity horrors,
Hmm.
almost like a plague from God down on
But
America.
that's
That
what I'm
those are
saying is
the different times.
that the Republicans at that time were the hawks, excuse me, were the doves. And they were fighting FDR tooth and nail not to enter the war. And when he entered the war, there was a large segment of the American population, most of whom were on our side of the aisle now, who he tried to use that as political fodder that he needed to be removed. And they wanted to
Oh
end
yeah,
his
yeah.
presidency, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And they thought that when all these body bags were coming back after the Normandy invasion, that they had him, that he was finished politically. I don't know, man. I,
Until they realized that that fucking won the war. I mean,
yeah, but when did we learn that it was going to win the war? That's what I'm saying is that that's the thing is that right now you would think I think the more this becomes an actual wartime president, he becomes an actual wartime president. You need casualties for that. I think the harder it'll be for him to be beaten. Unless he,
I don't. I mean,
unless they can
if that's the
prove that
case,
he created it, barring
if that's
that.
the case, then we're gonna skip past all the FDR stuff because FDR was essentially a highbrow socialist in a capitalistic country that managed to navigate through natural disasters to this country, unemployment rates that'll
Mhm.
never be seen again, or the country would collapse, and then go into a period of we're not going to intervene, which was politically dangerous when our allies are about to be wiped out,
Right.
and then into winning a war. I mean, there's no way to compare, so we'll just move past all that and go to Nixon again. I think we're back at Nixon again, and we're back at Nixon running for election in '72. He's got a bombing campaign in the
Mhm.
northern part of Vietnam and Saigon. We got rumors going around about Cambodia, illegal bombings of the Ho Chi Minh trails that were going into Cambodia. But there were bodies coming home. I mean, there were a lot of bodies coming home in 1972, and we won that. There were a lot of strife and civil, you know, uh, people going nuts in the streets where we had to get the National Guard to settle shit down, and we still won an overwhelming victory in 1972.
Both in
It's very
68
different.
and 72, the Democrats believed that they were going to get rid of, they believed they were going to win. I'm talking about the voter, not the people in the DNC. They knew they were screwed. But the Democrats believed that the war was so unpopular that there's no way that America was going to tolerate it. And the exact opposite happened. Right.
Well, and people and Jen saying here, well, the media wasn't bad then,
Sure, it
or as
was. It
bad
was
then, but I
horrible.
but I would argue it
Horrible.
was awful, and there were only three networks, and all they did was show
Every day.
footage of Hueys with legs dangling out, with
Exactly.
blood coming off the boot, and they would update the body counts of Vietnam soldiers killed and wounded every night, going into the between that whole period between
Vietnam was the
69.
first war that was in people's living rooms every night.
Literally.
And I think that it's naive to think that we've evolved so much. I don't think we have. I think what we've done is we've been lulled into some kind of long sleeping period since the end of the Cold War. That goddamn peace dividend that the libs kept going on and on about was the beginning of the end for our foreign policy and for people being serious about it. It was like, oh yeah, the Soviet Union's gone, yay, we have no more problems. And we slept through 9/11 as well. Let's be honest about it. 9/11, in my estimation, was a disaster on every front. Right? What was I mean, I turned on that motherfucker within the first
Yeah,
month. Right?
I
Because
look at that as the ultimate exposure of this notion that we had a sophisticated intelligence network around the world, and or that we had multiple intelligence gathering law enforcement agencies that worked together, and that we clearly had it all exposed. That we ignored every ground operative and CI that we had told us this was happening. We did nothing. We let it happen, whether we knew it was going to be that day, that target, whatever. And if you still watch Homeland to this day on HBO, it is like real time rip off of the headlines of our failures.
Oh, that means that they're
And
never going to cancel it. That thing will be good for 100 years.
yeah, I mean, well, this is supposed to be the last season, but they're going to be like, I don't think we can quit
Oh
now
no,
because
no,
realistically,
extra seasons coming in for coronavirus 20. Right?
yeah, I think you look at, all of this stuff has fallen off the map. I mean, look at all of the things that we're not discussing right now. Look at all the things that have just been paralyzed in the news media by this thing. Now, there's opportunity here for this president to execute a lot of things behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not talking domestically. I'm talking in the world scene. Get shit done. The Iranians decided, I think rather, I think it was a rather inauspicious move to try to activate cells of their rebels in Iraq to attack our soldiers while they're dying at a rate of about 190 to 250 a day all of a sudden from this COVID-19. Why would you destabilize your regime any more than it already is? And frankly, a lot of people are saying, I mean, CNN itself had a tweet out tonight saying that Putin has put together a masterful plan to prevent the coronavirus, COVID, China, Wuhan. And you know what?
That's a joke, right?
That's total joke. It's there. But you
Yeah,
know what? If they keep saying that shit,
just keep saying it
then
until
what
the
China
numbers start
says is going
hitting.
to be true.
Yeah.
We're going to drop some of that shit over there, and Putin's going to fucking feel it every bit that we do.
Well, I mean,
It's all
you don't
fair.
think there are tons of Chinese going in and out of Russia? Please, I mean, it's a joke, man. It's a joke. The biggest mistake we made was normalizing China while it was still a murderous crypto fascist police state, right? Because it's not a fair partner. You can't have a real joint relationship with a crypto fascist police state. Why? Take a look around, guys. We need a
Yeah. How's
partner
that working out?
like the Italians who will tell us X number of people died today. And here's all the things we can provide you that we've seen. When the Chinese have lied to us for months now, they've been lying about the communicability of this. They've been lying about the symptoms. They've been lying about gestation period. They've been lying about numbers of people infected versus dead. They've been lying about what they're doing to combat it. They're not advertising. Here's how we seal people in apartment buildings and kill them. This is how we burn people alive. In fact, we found the most effective ways to kill our citizens. Here's a binder. Like Mitt Romney
Mm.
had all those binders of women. We've got binders
Yeah.
of corpses for you. They're not doing it because they're a secretive society. A police state, by its
Yeah.
very nature, is secretive. You can't have a relationship with these people. And it's taken
It it
something
it
like
it
this to
makes
drive it
me
home.
it makes me wish that Tiananmen Square had happened in '87 instead of '89. You know what I mean?
Mm,
I mean, give Reagan a chance, a foothold to have really had more time to concentrate on China at that period.
yeah.
And you're right. I mean, Bush was looking right at that
He didn't
image, the same
care.
image we all saw
He didn't care.
of the single one protester standing in
Bush
front of
is
the tank in the
exactly
square.
like Bloomberg, making the same kind of dumb statements like, oh, our Chinese partners, they're they're uh they're very popular. They have a
Mhm.
98% popularity amongst their people. They're legitimate, right? That's the 1,000 points of light up his ass.
Yeah.
That's what that was. But we've allowed it to happen. Yes, our politicians sold us out so they could become wealthy. At the same time, we supported them, we voted for them, and we bought all this cheap Chinese crap. So we're all complicit. We're all complicit.
Everything, literally
Yeah.
everything around me right now, all my kids' stuff is all made in China.
Right.
I mean, almost 98% of it, 90
I saw a
plus.
comment before you joined in the chat. Somebody was saying, I think it was High Turbine. High Turbine was saying, anyone who buys Chinese, we no more buying Chinese. Anyone who buys Chinese is a traitor. And I was thinking that I completely agree with that sentiment. However,
Yeah.
what can you find that's not made in China now? So look, okay, What are you going to be able to buy that's not made in China? What computer system are you going to buy?
But this was made in China.
Right.
This was
Right.
made in China.
Yes.
This was made in China. And what I'm talking to you on right now
Right.
was made in
How
China.
about this? See, this is a official Rush Limbaugh 2 if by T mug that he sent me for free because I was like the first of 50 people who ordered
Yeah.
his iced tea. And unfortunately, it's made in the USA. So we can't say
Oh,
this is
well, there you
not
go.
made in China. But Gingrich, most of the stuff on this desk looks like the laptop is China. Think the whatever this is, the iPad China, the desktop China. I'm sure this green screen's got to be
Yeah.
China. This fan is
This
probably
memory game
China.
my kids play with is China.
The only thing that's not China is the ammunition safe I have. It's a Liberty safe. It was made in America. But the secondary
I got
safe, unfortunately, was made in China.
a little piggy bank
Made in
that
China?
looks like a British telephone booth.
China?
Is actually made in England.
All
So there you go.
right.
I'm glad that my youngest is keeping her money in there. That's good.
So the issue isn't that we want to buy American products. The issue is Americans are not making enough products to buy. The unwinding of this problem, as Adam says, is going to take decades. And it's always easier to sell out. It's always going to be easier to be able to go to Walmart and buy something at half price because an 8-year-old was whipped to death to make it for you. As opposed,
Target,
right,
Walmart, absolutely.
right. And so here's the thing: we all want to buy American until you actually start buying American and realizing, holy shit, my vitamin C tablets are now made in America, and instead of being $3.69 for 50 lozenges, it's now $9 for 50 lozenges. And suddenly you're pissed and you want China
Yeah.
again, right?
But no, I wouldn't. I mean, I think a lot of Americans have to decide, how do we want to play this? Do we want to pay $1 more? And I think the answer has to be yes. Crazy Eights that I play every night with my daughters, made right here in America,
All right.
Texas. So we're
Finally,
finding some good things here.
let's see. I wonder, please make this in America. It would be very disappointing. I have no way to know. What do you think the chances are this Stanley measuring tape?
Stanley measure, that's 100% chance American made.
Yeah? Why doesn't it say that? That's the. I'm going to tell myself this is made in America. Make myself feel better.
Trying to find my daughter's got Ralph Lauren sunglasses here, but I'm trying to tell myself they have to be made in America, but who knows?
Sunglasses. I think all of these are Italian. These are old anyway. Yeah, these are Persol. They're made in Italy. Made in Italy back in 1988, 87. Does that even count? Are they even real?
I don't know. I got colored toothpicks here for crafts, for homeschooling work. Roswell, Georgia. We're doing all right here, man. We're starting to find some stuff that
The sad look. The sad
stuff.
thing is everything electronic is made in China now, and if you're lucky, you can find stuff that's made in Singapore and or South Korea. That's like,
But most of my kids, the crappiest, most trinkety, crappy toys that they have, that's all China. I mean, it is just brutally China, all of it. Every single piece of shit laying around, China.
I went to the link that iTurbine gave, uslovelist.com, usalovelist.com, and let's see. Let's pick something out. How about let's look at their deals. They've got deals. This website is terrible. So let's go to shop. Maybe we'll see actual product. Okay, so really all it is just tell. Well, there's nothing here, man. This
Oh,
sucks. This
shit.
website sucks, High Turbine. I don't
Well, I
want to
got a My
read.
Little Pony coloring book, Len, from Pittston, PA. You can't beat that.
Actually made in the same state you reside. That's rare.
Pittston.
Oh
Pittston's
shit.
not too far away.
Drywall made in China, Jake says. See, then you know. The junk. Yeah, this is what Ruger LCP is made in. Yeah, in North Carolina. Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. That's the thing. The firearms industry is regulated to the point um, that we still have an American fire. Anyway, look, guys, we've been. It's not. It's. I wish I could tell you we were sold out by politicians, but that would be a lie. It takes two to tango, right? I mean, it's like we have been willingly falling over ourselves to buy all this Chinese garbage for 25 years. And now suddenly we're discovering that, maybe there's downside after being told that I don't understand economics for 20 plus years by these assholes. Now suddenly, oh, maybe there is some reasons why we shouldn't be giddy about outsourcing everything to China. Being that they are a secretive
Absolutely.
police state, maybe there's certain things that we shouldn't have outsourced to China.
You know who's going to argue with you, right? The Chamber of Commerce is going to argue.
They're the ones
with
who've
you.
been telling people like
The
that.
Koch brother that's left living is going to argue.
Right. Well,
Paul Ryan's going to argue.
I've been told by these
couldn't
guys.
prove you more right than giving that list of people who would oppose what you're saying is exactly it. Now, I don't think we scramble for any particular products. I think, you know what, we get out there and you know what, we've lost that attitude that we had in the 70s and the early 80s and buy American. You know what, we don't flip it over and look anymore. We go for the cheapest price. And that is got to end. That retail consumerism drive does not help us. You know, what Target or Walmart or wherever, what they make off that Chinese product, we'll be more than willing to pay $1 more, and they'll get even more off of it because the shipping cost is less. Keep in mind, if you're making something 2 hours away in America, we can ship it even with a higher labor cost. We can ship it closer to the big box retailers. And if we pay $1 more, or whatever the product is, not only is Target or Walmart or wherever, they're going to make more money. The American company who shipped it is making more money, and the company who made it in America is going to make more money. The only one who's not going to save money on it is us. And you know what? That's us supporting our own economy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it, but it's an argument that has failed to make any impression on the American people in 2 decades.
Because we haven't given them a chance until we significantly curtail the number of crappy goods that we allow China to dump on us. We're not going to give Americans a chance to make a choice. And I know that if we put in some type, say one state, Glenn, and this is probably going to be challenged under law, but say a state, pick a state, probably a Republican state, that says, you know what, every retailer store in our state has to have a made in America aisle and international aisle. Now, because of commerce and the Commerce Clause, it's probably not going to last long, but we could do that. And I guarantee you, as an experiment, a thought experiment and a wallet experiment, we would have more people paying 10%, 25% more to buy American, knowing it was supporting American companies, American workers, and American transport.
I hope you're right. I have a dimmer view of things.
Well, it's not going to happen because no one's going to actually go through with all that. But I'm saying, as a thought experiment, I think Americans are willing to pay a little bit more to make sure that it's going into the pockets of fellow American workers. Like to salute our good friend George is in the house. George Erickson,
yes, he is.
Quarantine, California. Just got on. Well, you can afford to do that because it's only 11:44 your time. You can replay it. We might actually say something worthwhile. But not only thanks to us, we always thank you and all of our California friends who we know are almost like the people behind enemy lines in Red Dawn. That's how I feel about my friends in California.
Hmm.
They're getting the chairs against the wall message. I feel like we're issuing that chairs against the wall message to our friends in California. But we do love you.
I'm looking at this website that High Turbine pointed me to, and they've got. I'm looking at socks, right? American-made socks, and they're pretty fancy, and they're all about $15 a pair. Now, for $15 at Walmart, you could get like a 5-pack of Chinese socks,
At least.
right? But here's what I'm
Actually, for $15 at Walmart, I believe you could get a family of 5 from China.
probably.
Yeah.
What do you get for $10? Everything. Everything? We keep coming back to that. But look,
No racism here, folks.
sock it to me.
Just good honest humor.
So, yeah, people are liking that. So, look, here's what I'm thinking. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Why is it only Democrats can do this? This is an excellent time to connect Chinese products with you and your family dying horribly from this.
It's true.
I'm just saying, man, what's been on my mind for 3 weeks now, that I'm glad to see that there are people in the party, which I've supported my whole life, that barely did anything for me, now are actually woken up. We've got a president who's he's given the hard punches, and he's calling it out, saying, look, we don't really know when you open that box that says made in China, you don't know what the fuck is in there. You've got this virus, which this little short man named Fauci is telling me might live for 14 days.
Or more.
If it's cold enough, right? In that crate. I mean, those sea crates, they're not warm. And by the way, the airplane the airplane containers are super cold. Have you ever gotten anything out of an airplane? It's bone cold.
Man, let me give you some straight up dope here.
Yes.
I just had my birthday. My daughter had a birthday after that. We're great friends in the fam,
Back to back.
and my other IRL friends send packages and stuff like that. They're all decontaminating in the outer shed. I'm not opening shit. I'm not bringing that stuff in my house. I mean, it's not gonna happen. I'm not gonna risk that.
But you see,
And I would say,
wouldn't that interrupt the Chinese delivery lines?
Wouldn't that interrupt it a little bit? Don't send me anything from China.
Listen, man, suddenly those $15 socks on this website will seem like a bargain because your family won't die, right? I'm just saying we should take advantage of this.
We could have them sponsor us, like stroke spoons for Dilly's show.
Yes.
We'll sell a lot of them. Everything will work out. But honest to God, what's happening now, when you're a parent, especially a parent of young kids, and then you have parents that are in that age group, over 70, you become like, I don't know, like RoboCop. I mean, it's really like Peter Weller without the funny jokes at the beginning. You become RoboCop. It's not funny anymore. It's like, now you came in from outside, you touched something, now you've lost your right to play outside. Come in, wash your hands, sit down, watch your device. Social distancing means 6 feet. That's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen my parents in a couple of weeks because I don't want to be anywhere near them, because I don't want that on my conscience should anything go wrong. That's the way I'm playing this thing out for at least 15 days. I'm playing the game that's being put before me. And I can tell you right now, from the messages I'm getting, and you might be getting some of them too, is if this thing is extended another 15 days, depending on where you live, there's going to be a pushback, and it's going to be pretty harsh, and it might end up, with a backfire. That's what happened in Italy. They tried to clamp down. People pushed back and went out, and all of a sudden they realized they were all getting sick, and it was not a good fucking thing. And you've got 30% of people over in Italy right now that are in pretty bad shape that are under the age of 50. And so everybody's waking up and kind of wondering what's really going on here. And is it mutating? And let me tell you this, I'm studying this shit all day, every day. And from everything that I've read, from all of the experts and watching all of them in the background while I'm reading about it, it is only in movies or in novels
Mm,
where a virus gets deadlier and mutates deadlier as it travels across the globe. That doesn't happen in nature.
right.
In order to mutate, it mutates to survive and gets weaker so it can keep the host living longer and all the other shit like that.
It's like
Which
Republican
is horrifying.
politics in that way, that we start off with actual Republican positions, but as we need to actually win elections, we need to water it down until we get, you know,
until it's barely effective at all.
until
That's
you and
exactly
I are actually making full throated endorsement of some rhino because we know it's the best we're going to get in that state. And we'll be lucky to keep the vote for when we need it in the Senate, right? I mean,
yeah.
that's the world.
Um,
The Andromeda Strain, great
I,
film.
I think the Andromeda strain is like a different subset of everything. We're not talking about alien,
No, I
literally
know,
alien,
but it's just I love that was one of
So,
my favorite
but I
films of
get the
the
point.
70s.
High Turbine's making. Um, and Mother of Three, I don't think there's any. I think you have much more to be worried about with the actual flu than you do about civil unrest. Uh, First of all, civil unrest would require a whole lot of people to just violate social distancing. Who would dare do that? But no, to be honest with you, police are looking to make an example out of the first bit of unrest anywhere, and I pity the people that want to do that
You
because
mean
they're going to get beat down
the leftists who would
hard.
be doing it
Yeah,
because it's going to be these Antifa types that would break the.
they will. They'll try to make it look like a fascist crackdown and all that other shit, but they'll get a beat down. It'll be pretty
Hey, you
hard.
remember Chicago '68? That's what it's going to be for them.
Yeah, the old hairy haircut could come back.
uh,
Uh, it could come back in rubber bullet form.
what was
And
that
so anyway,
mayor? Was it Mayor Daley in Chicago that was
yeah,
cracking
Mayor
down?
Daley was, yeah.
He was a tough motherfucker, that guy.
Mhm.
A Democrat, hardcore Illinois Democrat, literally cracking the skulls of hippies left and right.
Which people were hoping would foreshadow this upcoming convention with the Democrats, but now we see that that's over. It's
No.
been over, and now this is an awkward. People saying, Biden's going to try to do these daily or weekly, whatever's. I think it's going to be a spectacular failure. I can't tell you how dumb strategically this move is. I think the best move he could do is continue a campaign and do it in a way that's Facebook spending, digital spending, television spending.
Mhm.
Do not try your little town halls where you're like walking off. This is him here.
I know. Did you remember that shit?
Uh,
He's like talking on Zoom to somebody, walking
yeah,
off the podium while he's giving. Come on, man.
but what the hell
Not
is going
since my
on? So
great aunt, who had Alzheimer's, tried to attack my father, thinking on all fours, thinking she was a dog, and she tried to bite him while woofing, while making the woof woof sound. Not since seeing that have I seen dementia that wacky. You got a guy running for president,
wow.
wandering around like he's waiting for the taco stand to open again. He doesn't realize the mic is
Yeah.
on. Really?
The even worse is when he's trying to give his video speech thanking volunteers after that one election last and his wife comes on. He's like, "Who are you?"
Right.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
wait, I thought
Where are
my
we going?
wife was 26 years old and
Oh my god.
wait, who are you then? I haven't been having who's the girl I've been having sex with the last 3 months? You know that's coming. He's going to be hot mic moment where he's like, God, the guy's so weird.
I don't know. There's
He's so
nothing.
weird.
I've heard this in politics before. There's nothing worse than a politician whose brain has stopped working and his penis still works. It's the worst combo you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
I think Biden might qualify for some of that stuff.
Who knows what's going on? But he's just become like a caricature, and I think these stunts, if effectively, it looks like his campaign right now is relying on these weird PR stunts to try to stay relevant, which is a horrible strategy during a time
Mhm.
when people feel like they and or their family could die. It's just horrible optics the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think he's kind of hoping that this thing goes away quickly too. Um, but I hate to say this because, boy, you just don't want to throw out this type of conjecture, but we know the Democrats are hoping for some type of logistical failure.
Yeah,
And let's just face it, logistical failure in this response is death. So they're actually, they don't want to be out there looking like, what they really are, which is grim reapers, but they really do. They do want failure. And in this case, failure is death,
right.
death of America.
Listen, I don't hold that against them because, frankly, if this had happened during the Obama period, I would hope that he fucks up as well, that we could get rid of him. This is politics. If we're going to be honest about it, I thought Obama was incompetent, and fortunately for him and many other U.S. presidents since FDR, what real problems have any of these guys really had to deal with compared to the nuts and bolts of survival? But now we have Trump, and so listen, Trump had it. I know this whole impeachment thing was terrible to go through, and it was unprecedented. But compared to this virus thing, that was a walk in the park,
Mhm.
right? Because the impeachment still belonged to the unserious world. Now we have real problems where people, their children could die, their grandmother could die, and
Yeah.
at what point do the voters start blaming the government? I think it's natural
Well,
that they
that's
might, but
here's the thing. I think that there's a mutually assured destruction pact being built right now between Newsom
the governors and
and
yeah,
Cuomo and Murphy and Prick in Illinois. I think they know that there's no survival if they criticize or attack the federal government's response. That Trump is exactly the type of guy who will point out everything that they failed to do timely, and that's not going to be good.
no, I think that
So
they need to really blow it in a major. Listen, having a virus come from another country and kill some people. That's not. I mean, look, you can make I could make the argument like I tried earlier, talking about 20 years of inattention, and that's not going to move the needle at all. It didn't move the needle in the last 30 years. People don't think like that. Um, I think as long as the president, the optics are he's doing more than people expected, and he's being straight with the American population. He's not lying to them. He's not trying to sugarcoat things. Um, and keep using his people who are professionals like Fauci and others to lend credibility that I'm not sitting here making decisions in a vacuum. I'm having the head of the NIH here, right? I mean, it's like I'm getting the best advice possible. I don't think I think if he continues to do what he's doing and maintains that level of seriousness, um, I think this helps him in the long run.
yeah, I mean, we don't know what the circumstances are going to be, but I can tell you what: if the federal government is helping to facilitate, no matter with what
Right.
Washington, California, even Colorado, um, Maryland, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, whatever they need. Okay. These are not states we're looking really for electoral college vote win. But um, if these governors are thankful and they refuse to play politics come presidential election time, when this has started to it tapers down and we have effective treatments, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even a vaccine in play. These governors are going to be under a lot of political pressure by Democrat fundraisers and leaders in Congress to attack the president. And
Right.
I think in some cases they just won't do it.
Or the
They
attacks
just won't do it.
will be like a 1 or 2 instead of an 8 or a 9, right?
And if they do attack the president's going to break out everything that he did for those states and why he had to do it because they didn't do it themselves.
Yeah.
And he's going to weaken the governors. So the governors will live another day. Gavin Newsom's not interested in being president right now. He might be in 2024. Same thing can be said for Cuomo. These are people that have a political life that they want to continue. And as much as you might be horrified that human life and lethality, mortality, and morbidity factors into people's political decisions, it does. It does very much. Once you devote your life to that level of politics, you become not just a voter, you become hopefully a living voter for them. And if you're not a living voter, you become a liability. So there's all kinds of things that go along with this. And Trump is playing it in a very sophisticated fashion. And as long as Fauci and Birx and the admiral from HHS are there to be this slightly nonpartisan feedback, we're okay as long as we don't lose control of what's going on. And yeah, I want to go back and repeat some things before we get all wrapped up in our glory of Trump's got this handled and all this other shit. And let me explain the worst case scenarios again. And I'll do it in ways that are representative of what facts we know now. And that is that this is very infectious, whether or not its mortality rate is 2 or 1 or 0.5 or whatever. The infectious rate is very much higher. So it also is, of course, more deadly to people with underlying conditions of a certain age. Forget all the articles you've read about 30-year-olds in the ICU. We know what's really happening there. Not only here so far, but what happened in Italy. It's happening in Italy, I should say. So we're going to have a baseline that we're going to be working off of. It got to be tampered down. I mean, I've got to remind everybody that if you are intent on believing that your sore throat or your stuffy nose or your dry cough is something that requires testing immediately, by all means call your doctor. And they say that you don't have enough symptoms, self-isolate or whatever, go ahead and, depending on your age and your conditions, just self-isolate, shelter in place. When you go into a hospital, you are risking the entire hospital complex. You are risking everybody who's there for other conditions. They're already immunodeficient. They're recovering from surgeries. We're trying to stop elective surgeries, not even elective, but like cancer surgeries, heart surgeries, all this stuff is stopping. But just remember that this equipment that keeps doctors and nurses safe from getting infected has to be replaced every time they are around you
Mm-hmm.
as a potential. They're going to have to wait 2-3 days to get the test back on you. And everybody who tests you at a drive-through test or a walk-through test, they have to replace all of their protective equipment and put it back on. That's the most important thing that we have to get out to the people. That and the respirators. The ventilators are on the back end. We're trying to produce them. And if things go to hell in a handbasket, hopefully, ventilators will start popping up. But if it goes that far back, we're in trouble. If we don't have enough ventilators, we're already into the next phase of what Glenn and I talked about, which is like when you see the gurneys in the hallways and then they start to spill out. into the turnabouts in the emergency rooms, and you have people dead outside and sheets over them. And once America sees that type of footage here and not in Italy, you can pretty much throw away chances at re-election. So let's just do what we have to do, even if we are barely recovered at the end of the third quarter. I think Trump has proved once he could build a great economy. So why would you not think he could do it again? Especially if he gave up, sacrificed for the country, that economy to keep people alive. I think that's a story that our kids will read about in history books 40, 50 years later, and we'll read more books about it from the people that like to do those little things that eventually become HBO movies and other movies. I think that's what's going to happen. You got to think really big. You got to think really bold. You got to save American lives, but you also have to, in the back of your mind, have half your NSC, half your trade council reps thinking about how to screw China because they screwed us.
Well, think of how far we've come since the inauguration, when 9-1 against were against Trump, making the point that when it comes to raw materials required to make military stuff, it should be American. That we can't depend on the Chinese or any foreign country in delivering the materials we need to make our tanks, our planes, our subs, our ships, etc.
Yeah.
We were 9-1 against it, maybe 8-2 against it.
But now he's done that, right? So now we got to move to the next phase, right? Like
Right.
pharmaceuticals, any type of drugs, and
Yeah, 90% of all the generics are coming out of China, which, by the way,
yeah, we got
you
we
really
got to
want to,
stop it.
by the way, Grandma, you really want to be taking that Walmart supplement made in China? You think people aren't going to start for the first time in 25 years looking to see where the sourcing is on this stuff? And maybe, just maybe, for the first time ever, they're going to say, maybe I don't want to buy echinacea made in China. Maybe I'm willing to pay an extra $4 for something made in Canada or the United States, or maybe even Great Britain
Yeah.
or the EU. Possibly even I'd go Singapore or India,
Or
right?
Central South America. We're willing to open up the trade on all this stuff. There's a lot. We know there's a lot of resources down there as far as that type of you know vitamins and supplements and all this stuff. But I gotta say, China could poison us slowly and we'd never know it. I mean, they could be, it could be, I'm not even being a conspiracy theorist here when I say there's nothing stopping them. There's no FDA test on every product sold over here. Certainly, if it's not even an FDA product, like
Mm-hmm.
supplements and all that other bullshit, they could slowly be effing with us. And this is exactly what they will do. Now, for all the people that say that China developed this in a lab, specifically so it would get out the way it did, that's not quite the way China does business. They don't hack off their right foot in order to try to get your left arm.
No,
This whatever happened, and it will happen again over there
it already happened
because
before
as
this. Are we going to
yeah, of
forget all
course.
of the avian bird flu and all this other bullshit?
Yeah, as long as they're eating bat genital soup and whatever else they're freaking doing over there, they're risking that mutation strain of whatever, another animal has. And frankly, it's embarrassing that we have gone this long with this level of trade with
Yeah.
China
We've
at
turned the
this
other
level of
cheek.
disparity.
We're turning the blind eye. We've been doing it for almost 30 years now. I think no matter what happens in November, the average person, even if they don't vote for Donald Trump, I don't think the days of China getting this passed, they're over.
Well, how much do you think if I told you, and you already know, but if I told people what they might have heard is true, is that Obama pretty much gave second term missions to Joe Biden for two countries of oversight, that being Ukraine and China.
Great.
And
He did
both
it.
of them are now involved in scandals involving his son and his brother
It's a good
and
job.
money
He did a great job.
invested. I mean, really, I just think it's just the worst candidate. That's why, in the back of my mind, Glenn, I think they're going to inject that poor bastard with COVID-19 and not let him out of the convention because he's that piss poor of a candidate
So let's
that no matter
explore
what
that.
happens here.
So one of the many theories, not theories, paranoid delusional thoughts that are scattered around Twitter. One of them piqued my interest because I don't know, on some level, I could kind of buy into it a little bit, which is this, that Andrew Cuomo, who is one of the most hated people in the
Hmm.
Democrat Party. I mean, it's like if you're Andrew Cuomo, and then you have the people running the Democrat Party. He's the guy that whenever he leaves the room, they're like, fucking prick. I mean, no one likes this guy. But suddenly, it looks like, it's like very ancient. It's like the ancient world. Like the senators in Rome don't like him, but the people love Augustus Caesar, right? The people love him. And so the senators were afraid for many years to move against him because the will of the people. If the people go crazy, next thing you know, the people have overrun the Senate and you all have no heads. So there's always that like yin and yang. I can't deny that as much as I despise Andrew Cuomo, and I despise him, I think he's one of the most disgusting people in politics today. Yet, compared to the ass clowns across the country who are governors for the Democrats, I got to at least recognize he is giving a good performance as governor. He is that sort of voice of reason compared to look, it's like everything's comparative. You got Bill de Blasio, bleeding away the stupidity. And you have
No.
Andrew Cuomo, who is at least not a complete and utter ass clown. He's trying to, in a measured way, tell the people in New York, this is, I watched some of this stuff. He's like, this is what we're doing. Here's what we're seeing. Here's how we're dealing with it. If you are over the age of 60 and you need help with that, we have these programs. Call this number. Go to this website. So he's almost every day communicating directly to the people of New York. I don't know when the
But he's
music.
doing it with a different level of empathy than De Blasio. De Blasio is trying to act like FDR,
Right, which is a
and just
joke.
start throwing programs around and shit. But Cuomo was talking about his daughter a couple of days ago and how difficult it is to be socially distanced. And then he brought his daughter into the press conference. He is humanizing the shit
Right.
out of this, and nobody I've noticed, by the way, Cuomo and Trump have known each other a very long time. And while it looks like they're fighting a lot, and they are over the last year and 2 years, um, Cuomo thinks he knows best how to get through to Trump, and Trump thinks he knows best how to get through to Cuomo. And right now is what you call the optimal zone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're right there. It could go off the rails again very quickly,
Sure.
but Cuomo pulled a Trump on Trump. Cuomo said, we don't get enough leadership out of the federal government. We need this, this, and this. Later that night, two of his three requests were approved by the White House,
Right.
and he got the big military hospital ship, and he got a huge delivery of the respirators that he needed.
Trump
And
is
then all of a
boxing him
sudden,
in. He's boxing him
yeah,
in.
he changed.
Yeah.
He changed his tone.
Right. Because
And
now
Trump
he
knows the two biggest media markets are where? New York City,
in Los Angeles.
California,
Yeah.
Los Angeles Bay Area.
Well, isn't it interesting that the due to Cuomo's incompetence with the economics of New York has a $6 billion shortfall every fiscal year due to their stupidity. And isn't it interesting? Am I wrong in thinking this, Adam? But when I saw that his wish list of coronavirus related federal aid, it was $6 billion. Am I
Yeah, that's
wrong in
right.
thinking he's just
I
like,
would think that you're not wrong, but I think Newsom's even ahead of where Cuomo's at because they are much further behind
yeah?
in California,
How
and I
much?
think they want
How
to
much
use
do they
this.
need? Like
Oh
20?
my God, a lot. And I'll tell you, the Trump even referenced it about the wildfire stuff, about how he disagrees with the wildfire stuff with Newsom, but they're getting along over this is because California has so many issues that they brought upon themselves. They have not been ready to rechannel water distribution in light of low snowfall in the Sierras over the years, which happened regardless of what you want to call climate change. They have failed on desalinization efforts that should
Oh,
have been
yeah.
completed 10 years
Don't
ago.
get me started.
Uh,
I know the guy who designed their
and they
computer
leave
system.
and they leave driftwood and deadwood laying everywhere. Not driftwood, deadwood, but all types of things that they think are fine for the underbrush, which of course are laying under power sources and power lines, which of course always end up lighting up huge forest fires. They have 2 out of the last 3 years the biggest forest fire losses that they've had in decades. And he's looking to shore up. He's definitely looking to shore up on some of the monetary losses because they lost their last, I believe they lost their last resolution for a tax increase for funding some back funding some of this stuff. So listen, we're not here to bail out California. We're not here to bail out New York, but we are here to keep as many of you alive as possible. And I can tell you that because I love dearly a lot of people in California. They happen to be Republican, but that doesn't matter. And you don't want everybody in New York to die. Not everybody, but at least in your case, not everybody, just maybe most.
My feelings
But I'm
are
telling you,
like the Batman, that remake with Christian Bale, where at the ending, I think he's telling whoever, what was that, Ras Al Ghul was the
yeah,
enemy.
yeah, it was
Remember, he says,
Liam Neeson.
yeah, he
Yeah,
says to him, I am not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. There's like that fine, he put a fine point on it, which is, I'm not going to murder you, even though I think you're scum and you deserve to die. But that means I don't have to save you now either. I can let nature take its course. You can reap the results of your own decisions. And that's how I feel about New York and California, that we should allow them to sink or swim on the strength of their own administrative abilities. And it would be a shame if we underwrite their bullshit. But I listen. I'm cool with
right.
Trump writing the bribe checks even to them if he thinks that he can thread the needle to his advantage in November.
But in the
But
end, we're running for re-election, and
right,
in the end, it's an electoral college battle. So in the end, the states that have been loyal to us and that will get us reelected have to be considered into the mix,
sure.
even when we're talking about some
But
mortality here.
don't you think that even in these states, which I consider lost causes, in the public's mind, in the states that matter, electorally, we don't
Yes,
want to
yes.
appear like this Batman in the movie, but we don't
No,
want
no,
to,
no, 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 no,
right?
no. I'm saying you've got to. Yeah, you're right. The more you do in a humanitarian fashion in states that are not going to vote for you,
Right.
yes, the more likely it is to spill over. Um, Particularly if we do something very effective as far as treatment and get it on the ground quickly, administered. California, New York, Colorado, Washington, and we start to see very positive results. And all of a sudden, the people in Nevada and New Mexico um, and Texas, and they're all start to wake up to the fact that how close they came to having been overrun by this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that type of federal action in conjunction with state implementation means that you could see the flip side of the whole thing, which means Trump wins. Trump wins by 320, 327 electoral votes. But unfortunately, there's such a deep seated hatred and distrust and mistrust of him and his administration that I don't see a landslide ever happening. And I think the fact that we're sitting here talking about even winning an election right now is we're I'm not saying pie in the sky, but we're talking the odds are higher number on that side than the lower side. So um, where it was a 1 to 3 odd 2 months ago that we were going to win the election, I think it's more like a 2 to 1 or 1.5 to 1 or whatever that you're going to see us be favored to win until this whole thing settles down. Just don't fucking know. Nobody fucking knows. I mean, we're gonna wrap it up here. I mean, we're about done here, but I just want to say that nothing tonight out of my mouth or Glenn or anybody typing in here is meant to be a definitive opinion at all. If people in the administration don't know the final answer, if people at the NIH or
Hmm.
CDC or any other public health agency doesn't know the answer, certainly Glenn and I do not. We can talk about mitigation, we can talk about scenarios, but I can tell you this: next Saturday night, I mean, we'll be on a couple times before now and then, but um, next Saturday night, we're going to have a lot of data, not only from Europe, but from our own hotspots in America. And we'll be able to start to, take that data and make some math work on it and see that if we're leveling, increasing, or lowering. And that's going to change a lot of the financial policy decisions. It's going to change the market. It's going to change politicians. The fact that we've got some congressmen that have, flown home with positive test afterwards, and meaning they might have infected domestic flights on the way home, it changes the way everything is going to work. And I think that Mitch McConnell has put us in the upper the well the I think we're bird dogging a little bit because I don't see a lot of room to move for Schumer or Pelosi. Bill's asking if we're trying to bring Hassett back. I think Kevin is already back in some capacity. It's already a done
What
deal.
do you think
Kevin
about
Hassett.
that?
I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I think he's a little alarmed that the wealth loss is going to be challenging, and the more we gap it out, is going to be bad news. But Mnuchin is winning the war of the hearts and minds in the White House. So he's gonna be up against Steve Mnuchin. So we'll see how that goes. And for anybody who lives in a state where your governor is smart enough to bring up the National Guard, probably only on average 100 to 125 National Guardsmen. They're there to pass out food, medicine, help facilitate lines for testing. They're not there for law enforcement. They're not there for transport. They are people who have jobs just like you, normally when they're not in uniform. There's no martial law being declared in any state, which is where they would declare it at a state level. That doesn't happen at a national level. For any idiot who tells you the Stafford Act, signed by the president or enacted by the president, that or activated, I should say, has anything to do with military involvement, they're idiots. And you can laugh all these assholes off the internet. We're going to have limited deployments just to logistically help out, very similar to hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, and to the brief interlude that we did down at the border to help out with the patrol agents, just on contingencies, logistics, things of that nature.
What is NG?
Yeah, I would like to interrupt you here, but I've heard a lot of these Singapore, South Korea equivalents. Um, Serious Cat's asking, hopefully we trend like South Korea, only 2 deaths and 98 cases. Listen, once everything started happening over in China, there was a quick cutoff over in the sub Asian theater flights and people coming in and out. But you have to understand that they're fairly monolithic with their population anyway. And South Korea is, of course, blocked by the parallel. No one from North Korea is coming in. And then around it is no other country at all, ocean, sea. And South Korea is roughly the size of Indiana. It has 15 to 18% of the total population of the United States of America. Very easy to track them. They're all condensed. They're all there. They were all tested. They were all asked about where they were. You cannot compare us to Singapore or South Korea. Very silly for anyone to make that on Twitter. I would hope that we don't have our people doing it. We are a nation of 300 and most likely 335 million people, if you include illegals. And we are the size of, you know, something very large. Fourth largest contiguous land. I forget what it is. I mean, I know we're in the top 5 there as far as geographical square footage, square mileage. So you cannot compare any of these things at all, with South Korea and Singapore. Doesn't make any sense. Tell me, our mutual friend Hassine is not gaslighting National Guard.
Your mutual friend, not mine. I hate that fuck. I've been open about my hatred for him, and he is. He's on Facebook talking about martial law and the government's gonna we're gonna become a
He's right
police
back.
state.
He might as well hang out with Dilly again.
He's kind of like a wealthier version of Dilly. If Dilly had like $100 million or whatever, $50 million.
Well, I don't know. After a couple of botched
Well,
uninsured
I'm
robberies,
talking from my frame of reference is still 2016 with this guy. But look, if it is going to be some kind of police state that's going to be created according to him, then maybe he'll get the job in being able to call the police because he's shown such a penchant for his ability to make that call to the police in a timely manner that doesn't destroy the operation to catch the criminals who've come through the ceiling in his store. You know.
well, the thing is, Gavin Newsom is not going to willingly call up a massive amount of National Guardsmen because it's just going to be. Can you imagine that with commingling with the
Yeah.
California population at large?
No, no, no.
He will not do that. He will not do that.
Listen, the National Guard, there's a role for them in anything, but right now, I'm just seeing people taking pictures of National Guard equipment being moved around the country on
Oh,
trains, which happens
on rail,
every
yeah.
fucking day in this country. But now you can just take the picture and turn it into something sinister.
But most of those footage shots are so fucking old anyway. It doesn't really matter.
That's
Our
what we should do,
followers, our
man.
viewers,
That's
they
what
don't
we should
believe
do.
it.
We should get. I'll find some photos of military equipment, transportation from like the Korean War period, and I'm going to start
Yo,
gaslighting
yeah,
people.
definitely. Like fucking tanks we haven't made
Right.
in forever. Yeah,
Exactly. And so I'm
yeah,
going to start putting those out saying, look, it's martial law. Look, the
yeah,
Germans are winning the war.
yeah.
We're all done for. We're done for.
Yeah, we're done for. It's over. You know.
I hated this crap when it was being done with government agencies buying ammunition, 9mm ammunition for the training requirement, and that being spun into they're buying ammunition to shoot us. Remember that period? And
Well, I'll tell you what.
when was that?
Yeah, the whole theory was
2014?
stupid, but
Yeah,
uh,
2013.
Homeland Security at one point did buy in bulk, and it for a couple of months it drove up production value and cost, and Americans don't appreciate that shit, so that
No,
that never happened
but
again.
there's a difference between buying a lot of ammo for use in legitimate purposes for their own armed people versus trying to spin it as the government is preparing to kill its
Yeah,
citizens, right? I mean,
yeah, we're all gonna. Well, let us say right here openly, we are not a pirate broadcast. We are about as true law-abiding patriots that you can get, and we're firearm owners, and no one's coming to do anything to us unless they are prepared for return fire. And that's just the way life goes. And then this is America. If that's how it started, return fire is how America started, by the
mm-hmm.
way, folks.
Yes.
And that's how it'll end. And the British controlled this country when we shot them dead in the fields. And if our own government decides to enact something that we don't want, yeah, we fight back or we die doing so. I don't know what oath keepers are.
Oath
Maybe Glenn
keepers are
does.
retired law enforcement and military. It's a organization that really started growing exponentially during the Obama administration as a counterweight to what was viewed as government federalizing, encroaching
It sounds
on.
like it sounds like a forebear to Q to me. I don't
No, not
really.
really. They're like you. They're like Hell's Angels. They're like a bunch of
Okay.
ex-military bikers. Like you see these bikers for Trump. That's
Mm.
where all of it started in the same place. They're all basically veterans and retired law enforcement with some firefighters thrown in for good measure, and the occasional like desk jockey like myself. I'm not a member, but they are. They view it as they are there as a last line of defense to protect the Constitution against the government they see increasingly trying to remove our rights. And so they're very scary to the libs because
Well, I'll
I
tell
would
you.
say 9 out of 10 of their members are military trained combat veterans who are basically saying we've joined the Oath Keepers because one day we may have to take action. And so it's a very
uh, I
incendiary
understand all that
type
stuff,
of
and I
thing.
don't have any. I don't have denigration or anything derisive to say about it. All I have to say is that when it comes to real world interaction or interfacing with the thing that you think is starting to constrain or restrain your rights, then you have to find people like me who can navigate the political channels at which to exercise your aggression, because pure, unadulterated aggression in any form will always be put down by the government in power, no matter what. So there are ways to be more effective, and perhaps if we get a more scared future and don't control the presidency after 2021, then we might need something a little more sophisticated. That might happen. I don't know. If that's the case, then I think that that would be something that Glenn and I would be involved in.
Yeah, I mean the Oath Keepers, I think, are a kind of like a 20th century solution to a perceived problem. Um, but in the time what the Democrats have moved so far toward Bolshevism at this point, I
Mhm.
think I think our counter move to that, the Oath Keepers are very Victorian in comparison. It's not enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we don't need to talk about that
We
now.
don't. I
Yeah.
mean, we're not there yet, but in the event that things get a little hairy over the next couple days or weeks, we are going to present a different type of message on this particular program. It's going to be a little more concerted. It's going to be a little more linear focused. It's going to be a little more forward thinking. And we may address concerns with answers, or we may just express commiseration with your concerns. But as of it stands right now, we are going to keep this market open. We're going to have wild swings. We're going to have Democrats that are going to push back on this bill coming up. If they choose to vote no on it and they choose to make Americans miss payments for rent, mortgage, doctors, bills, whatever the hell, we're going to push back. We're going to push back really hard, and it's going to sound weird to some of you because you probably never heard myself or Glenn talk about the importance of getting the federal money into our free market capital system, but knowing the fact that we stood by and allowed certain governors to shut down our highest GDP states, knowing that that's going to ripple over into other state activities, that it's a little different situation. So if Schumer and Pelosi want to put themselves out there for that in an election year, then you'll hear all about it right here
Mm-hmm.
with us.
Yep. Yes, you will.
I'm talked out and walked out, brother.
Okay. Tuesday it is then. We'll see you Tuesday, Adam.
Tuesday it is. I hope to see everybody here because I'm not sure everybody really understands the severity of everything yet. But after we start getting closer and closer to the 15-day period, see the numbers not only in Europe but as we see it domestic, maybe people will start to get a little bit more engaged. But I appreciate everybody coming in here tonight. Certainly not a record high number of people, but I think Tuesday, word of mouth, get it out there. Let's get more people here. Let's talk about the solutions no matter what happens. So appreciate everybody here. 114 days, 18 hours, 21 minutes, 40 seconds until the humiliation of the abdicator in chief, Jeff Sessions, and I will let Glenn Herman sign it off.
All right,
Damn
Adam.
y'all.
There goes Adam, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll be on with the Colonel, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and again on Tuesday at 10 p.m. with Adam Gingrich. Until then, be safe, everybody, and have a good one.